The universe stretched vast and endless, pulsating with a rhythm that felt eternal yet fragile. In the beginning, there was nothing but a profound stillness, and then a hum, soft, almost imperceptible, began to rise. It wasn't just a sound, it was life itself stirring, weaving its way into existence. A dance of creation began, as ancient forces of light and darkness spiraled together, birthing time, space, and the sacred fabric of reality. From this cosmic swirl emerged water, the elixir of existence, shimmering and boundless. It was the first breath of the universe made tangible, a mirror reflecting both the chaos of creation and the peace of infinite potential. This was no ordinary water, it was divine, brimming with the energy of creation, carrying whispers of what had been and what was yet to be. Rivers, the veins of the earth, were born from this celestial stream, carving paths through land, offering life to all that would come. In the sacred order of things, rivers were not just flowing waters but living spirits. They carried stories within their currents, of gods, of dreams, of civilizations rising and falling. Among them, one river was destined to shine brighter, a celestial thread woven into the heart of existence. Ganga. Born from the heavens, she wasn't merely water, she was a force, a presence, a goddess. But before Ganga descended, there was the balance to consider. The universe operated on intricate harmony, each element tied to the next in a dance as delicate as a flame flickering against the wind. The gods, custodians of this balance, watched over every drop of water, every gust of wind, every grain of soil. It was their duty, and their burden, to ensure the cosmic order remained intact. The rivers they placed on the earth weren't just physical lifelines, they were spiritual conduits, connecting mortal lives to the eternal truth. Ancient India flourished along these rivers, its heart beating in time with the ebb and flow of their currents. Rivers were more than landscapes, they were sacred beings, revered as mothers, protectors, and guides. Every ripple carried prayers, every shore echoed chants of devotion. Children splashed in their cool embrace, farmers sought their blessings for fertile lands, and sages meditated by their banks, seeking answers to questions as old as time itself. The land thrived because of this symbiotic relationship. Rivers brought water for crops, but they also brought something far greater, a sense of purpose and belonging. They taught humility, reminding mortals of their place in the grand tapestry of existence. They whispered wisdom to those who listened, their flowing currents a metaphor for the transient nature of life. In the midst of this interconnected world, the Ganges remained in the heavens, waiting. Her story was one of destiny, of a descent that would change the face of the earth forever. But to descend from the celestial plane to the mortal realm was no small feat. The earth, though vast, was fragile. A force as mighty as Ganga could destroy it in her fierce cascade. The gods knew this, the mortals did not. Still, the earth below sang her name in unspoken pleas. Kings prayed, sages fasted, and the earth itself longed for her touch. It was as if everything and everyone understood, in some unspoken way, that the Ganges was more than just water. She was grace. She was forgiveness. She was the bridge between the finite and the infinite. Far above, Ganga flowed silently, her waters glowing with a light not of this world. She could feel the pull, the yearning from below. It was not just a call for sustenance, but for salvation. Her divine waters could cleanse sins, heal wounds, and guide lost souls. Yet her descent would require more than divine will, it needed a mediator, someone who could bear the weight of her power, someone who could receive her without shattering the fragile earth. There was a tension in the heavens, a waiting that felt like the stillness before a storm. The gods debated, the mortals prayed, and time itself seemed to hold its breath. For if Ganga was to come to the earth, her descent would need a force as steady and unyielding as her flow. It would need the intervention of something, or someone, extraordinary. The heavens trembled, and the earth stood silent as the mighty form of Vishnu expanded beyond mortal comprehension. In his Vamana avatar, he had taken the guise of a small Brahmin boy, humble and unassuming. But now, as he stretched his foot to claim the universe in 3 giant strides, the cosmos itself seemed to hold its breath. The first step spanned the earth, its mountains, rivers, and forests pressed beneath the lightest touch of his divine foot. The second stretched to the skies, claiming the realm of the gods. And then, as his foot reached higher still, into the infinite reaches of the heavens, something extraordinary happened. From the very tip of his toes, a drop of water emerged, small and delicate, but carrying within it the essence of creation itself. It was no ordinary drop, it was a force, a presence, imbued with Vishnu's boundless grace and power. This drop became a stream, a torrent, a river, pure and luminous, flowing from the heavens with an energy that felt both comforting and overwhelming. The celestial beings watched in awe. The river's waters shimmered with a light that no mortal eyes could endure, a light that seemed to sing with every color of existence. Her flow was a song, a hymn of beginnings, of purity, of boundless potential. This was Ganga, born from Vishnu's feet, destined to touch and transform every realm she graced. Her waters carried whispers of her divine origin. Each drop seemed to hold the echo of Vishnu's cosmic stride, the energy of creation, and the promise of renewal. As she cascaded through the heavens, she carved a path through the stars, her flow unending, her purpose clear. The gods bowed their heads as she passed. They understood what she was, a blessing, a promise, a bridge between the infinite and the finite. Her very essence spoke of grace, the kind that could cleanse not just bodies but souls, washing away sins, doubts, and fears. But even in her splendor, she was untamed, her power vast and unyielding. Yet Ganga was not just a river, she was a being of her own, alive and vibrant. She felt the pull of the earth below, the yearning cries of mortals who lived in suffering and darkness. She longed to reach them, to touch their lives, to bring them hope. But the earth was fragile, and her descent would be catastrophic without intervention. She needed guidance, a hand to steady her flow, a force to temper her might. The heavens whispered her name as she flowed, her waters a luminous thread weaving through the tapestry of creation. She was both the calm and the storm, the giver of life and the harbinger of transformation. Below, the earth waited, unaware of the divine grace preparing to touch its soil. And somewhere in the folds of time, a god sat in quiet meditation, his matted locks shimmering with the power to hold back the unstoppable. In the stillness of eternity, a harmony existed that was neither seen nor heard but felt in every fragment of existence. At its core stood the divine triad, Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, three forces, three truths, and three eternal presences intertwined in a delicate balance. Together, they were the pulse of creation, preservation, and transformation, each holding a purpose that no other could fulfill. Brahma, the creator, rose from the lotus that bloomed on Vishnu's navel, his eyes filled with the wonder of forming worlds. He was the first breath of life, the architect who sculpted the cosmos from the void. Yet, for all his wisdom, Brahma's creations were not eternal. They bore the seeds of their own decay, for what is born must one day die. Still, his hands never trembled, for he trusted in the cosmic design, the cycle that bound creation and destruction together. Vishnu, the preserver, watched over all that Brahma brought into being. Reclining upon the great serpent Ananta, his gaze held the vastness of time. Where Brahma brought life into existence, Vishnu nurtured it, ensuring the threads of creation did not unravel too soon. He stepped into the world whenever chaos threatened its balance, assuming forms that bridged the divine and the mortal. His was the steady hand that guided life through storms, his presence a promise that light would endure even in the darkest of times. And then, there was Shiva, the destroyer, the transformer. Yet, calling him merely a destroyer felt like a shadow of his truth. He was the silence after the storm, the stillness after the dance, the emptiness that made space for renewal. Sitting atop Mount Kailash, with ash smeared across his skin and a crescent moon resting gently in his hair, Shiva's essence was both fierce and serene. He did not destroy out of wrath but necessity, dissolving what no longer served, paving the way for what must come. The triad was not three separate beings, but a single, continuous flow. Without Brahma's creation, Vishnu would have nothing to preserve. Without Vishnu's preservation, Shiva would have no rhythm to guide his dance. And without Shiva's transformation, Brahma's creations would stagnate, choking the cycle that sustains all life. They moved in unity, each aware of the other, each dependent yet independent, like the sacred syllables of Om resonating in eternal harmony. Their interplay was more than divine, it was the lifeblood of existence. Brahma's hands molded the riverbanks, Vishnu's touch filled the rivers with flowing waters, and Shiva's gaze ensured that even the mightiest currents knew their purpose. Together, they shaped the universe not as gods standing above, but as energies woven into its every heartbeat. And yet, their roles were not bound by strict definitions. Brahma, though the creator, held the humility to step aside once his work was done. Vishnu, though the preserver, carried within him the ability to destroy when the need arose. Shiva, though the transformer, bore the infinite compassion to nurture life in his own quiet way. They were not fixed in their roles, but fluid, adapting to the needs of the cosmos, their essence reflected in every aspect of existence. This balance was not without its tensions. The gods, though divine, were not immune to the forces they governed. There were moments when creation overflowed, when preservation faltered, when destruction burned too fiercely. But even in these moments, the triad endured, their unity stronger than any discord. For they understood that their dance was not about perfection but balance, a balance that allowed the universe to breathe, to expand, to thrive. As Ganga coursed through the heavens, her luminous waters were a reflection of this balance. She carried Brahma's vision, Vishnu's grace, and Shiva's strength within her flow. Her descent to the earth would not merely be a gift, it would be a test of this balance, a moment when the triad's harmony would be called upon to ensure that her power did not overwhelm the fragile world below. Somewhere in the vast expanse of existence, the gods watched her shimmering path, their roles intertwined in ways both seen and unseen. Creation, preservation, and transformation awaited her descent, knowing that her story was not hers alone, it was theirs, and it was ours. The stars seemed restless that night, their flickering lights a silent witness to the weight of a king's desperate heart. King Sagara stood on the palace balcony, his eyes fixed on the vast horizon, where the heavens and earth met in quiet conspiracy. The world called him a mighty ruler, a conqueror of lands, but within him burned a longing far deeper than glory, a longing for legacy. His kingdom was grand, its people devoted, its borders secure. Yet, his throne felt empty, for Sagara had no heir to carry his bloodline forward. The whispers of fate grew louder each day, taunting him with the cruel truth that his dynasty might wither into nothingness. Refusing to bow to destiny, he turned to the gods, seeking their favor with unwavering determination. It was then that a blessing arrived, a promise of children. But blessings from the divine often come with trials, and Sagara's would be no exception. He was gifted not one son, but 60,000, their births hailed as miracles. The kingdom rejoiced, the air alive with the sound of celebration. The sight of his sons filled Sagara's heart with pride, their presence a living defiance of the destiny that had sought to deny him. But the gods are not easily defied, and destiny is rarely so kind. The sons of Sagara grew into men, strong and fierce, but their strength was tinged with arrogance. They carried their father's pride, but it twisted into something darker, an unyielding belief in their invincibility. Wherever they went, they left a trail of conquest and destruction, their actions sowing seeds of unease in the hearts of men and gods alike. One day, a sacrificial horse, sacred to an important ritual, disappeared from the palace grounds. The loss was an insult, a challenge to Sagara's authority. Enraged, the king commanded his sons to find the horse and restore the kingdom's honor. 60,000 warriors marched across the land, their footsteps shaking the earth, their resolve unbreakable. The search led them deep into unknown lands, their journey marked by destruction as they tore through forests and villages, leaving nothing untouched. Their arrogance grew with every step, as if the very earth they walked upon owed them reverence. But the earth has its own way of balancing pride, and their actions did not go unnoticed. Their path eventually brought them to the sage Kapila, who sat in quiet meditation in a remote ashram. The sacrificial horse stood near him, grazing peacefully, its presence untouched by the chaos surrounding it. The sons of Sagara, blinded by rage and arrogance, accused the sage of theft, their voices rising like thunder. Kapila did not stir. His silence was not weakness but a storm waiting to break. When his eyes opened, they burned with the fire of truth. The accusations of the 60,000 sons fell apart in the face of his unyielding gaze, their arrogance crumbling like dry leaves in the wind. In that moment, the sage unleashed his divine power, reducing the sons to ashes. The land fell silent, as if mourning the loss of so many lives. The ashes of Sagara's sons lay scattered, untouched by the winds, their weight heavier than mountains. The sacrificial horse stood unharmed, a symbol of innocence amid the ruin. Kapila, his task done, returned to his meditation, leaving the king's legacy in shambles. News of the tragedy reached King Sagara, and the weight of it crushed him. 60,000 sons, the pride of his heart, gone in a single moment. But Sagara was not one to surrender, even in the face of overwhelming loss. His heart burned with a new purpose, to bring peace to the souls of his sons. He learned that the ashes of his sons could only be purified by the waters of the Ganges, a celestial river that had not yet graced the earth. It was a task that seemed impossible, a plea that the heavens themselves would have to answer. And so, a new chapter began, not of pride, but of redemption, one that would ripple through generations yet to come. The forest held its breath, its ancient trees looming like silent witnesses to the steps of 60,000 men. Their march was relentless, their faces hardened by the single purpose that bound them, to restore their father's honor. The sacrificial horse was a symbol of their lineage, their pride, and they would let nothing stand in their way. But the further they pushed into the unknown, the more the air seemed to grow heavier, as if the world itself was warning them to turn back. At the heart of this forgotten land sat sage Kapila, his eyes closed in meditation, his presence as timeless as the mountains that surrounded him. He was no ordinary man, he was the embodiment of stillness, his wisdom reaching far beyond mortal comprehension. The sacrificial horse, untouched by the chaos that had trailed its disappearance, grazed peacefully nearby, oblivious to the storm heading its way. When the sons of Sagara arrived, their pride blazed like a fire-consuming reason. They saw only the horse, not the sanctity of the sage who sat before them. To their arrogant eyes, he was no more than a thief who had dared to challenge the will of their father, their king. Their voices rose, accusations spilling into the air like poison, disturbing the sacred silence that had reigned for centuries. Kapila did not move. His stillness was unnerving, his silence speaking louder than their shouts. They mistook it for weakness, for submission, and their fury grew. Their hands reached for their weapons, their feet trampling the sacred ground, their hearts blind to the truth of the being before them. And then, Kapila opened his eyes. It was as if the earth itself shuddered beneath his gaze. His eyes held not anger but a profound sorrow, a lament for the arrogance and ignorance that had led them to this moment. His voice, when it came, was calm, yet it carried the weight of the cosmos. "You speak of theft," he said, his words cutting through their noise like a blade. "But it is your pride that has stolen your wisdom, your greed that has robbed you of humility." The sons of Sagara did not understand the warning in his tone. Their hearts, consumed by their own righteousness, were deaf to his wisdom. They advanced, weapons drawn, their intent clear. Kapila sighed, not out of fear but out of the inevitability of what was to come. He raised his hand, not in anger, but in necessity, and the world seemed to pause. From his being burst a radiant fire, not of flame but of truth, a force so pure and overwhelming that it reduced the 60,000 suns to ashes in an instant. The ground was silent once more, the echoes of their cries fading into the stillness of the forest. The ashes lay where the men had stood, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked arrogance. The sacrificial horse, untouched by the destruction, lowered its head as if bowing to the sage. Kapila closed his eyes again, returning to his meditation, the weight of his actions settling like a shadow upon the land. But the story was not yet over. The ashes of Sagara's sons were not just remnants of their bodies, they carried the burden of their pride, their unfulfilled destinies, their restless souls. They lingered in the air, a silent cry for redemption, for peace, for release. And somewhere far away, a king mourned, not just the loss of his sons, but the loss of their honor, their legacy, their future. The earth, quiet and heavy with the weight of what had transpired, awaited the waters of the celestial river to wash away the sorrow and begin the cycle anew. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the heavens with streaks of amber and crimson, as if mourning a loss too great for words. Anshuman stood at the edge of a barren expanse, the wind whispering secrets of a tragedy older than he could comprehend. The ashes of his ancestors, 60,000 lives reduced to dust, lay beneath his feet. They did not cry out, but their silence was deafening, a weight that pressed on his soul with every breath. He knelt, his fingers trembling as they touched the earth. This was more than soil, it was a graveyard of pride, of a lineage once radiant with glory, now dimmed by the shadow of its downfall. Anshuman's heart ached not just for his forebears, but for the generations yet unborn, who would carry the stain of this dishonor. The elders had spoken of a path to redemption, a task so monumental it felt like reaching for the stars. The waters of the Ganges, they said, were the only force capable of cleansing the ashes and granting peace to the restless souls. But the river flowed in the heavens, far beyond the reach of mortal hands. To bring her to earth was to challenge the impossible. Anshuman rose, his resolve hardening like iron beneath a blacksmith's flame. He was a prince, a descendant of Sagara, and the burden of his family's redemption was his to bear. His steps were steady, his heart a battleground of determination and doubt as he set out on his quest. The journey took him through lands where the earth cracked under the weight of the sun, where rivers had dried into whispers of their former selves. The people he met bore the marks of suffering, their lives shaped by scarcity and struggle. Yet, they offered him their blessings, their prayers for a prince who carried not only his family's burden but also the hopes of a parched land longing for the touch of sacred waters. Anshuman climbed mountains that seemed to pierce the sky, their peaks crowned with snow that glistened like shards of light. He walked through forests where the shadows were so dense they seemed alive, their whispers warning him of dangers unseen. He meditated in caves where the silence wrapped around him like a cocoon, forcing him to confront the weight of his task. The gods watched, their eyes filled with both admiration and sorrow. They knew the path Anshuman walked was fraught with trials, each step a test of his spirit. But they also knew that redemption was never granted, it was earned through sacrifice, through perseverance, through an unyielding faith in the face of despair. In one of the forest's darkest corners, Anshuman encountered Garuda, the divine eagle, whose presence was as awe-inspiring as a storm over the ocean. Garuda, with wings that could block the sun, had witnessed the downfall of Sagara's sons and understood the weight Anshuman carried. With a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, Garuda spoke of the path ahead. "The Ganges is not yours to command," he said. "Her descent will shake the heavens and the earth. She flows where she wills, for she is as boundless as the sky and as fierce as the ocean. But if your heart remains pure, and your resolve unbroken, the gods may hear your plea." Anshuman bowed deeply, his gratitude spilling forth in silent tears. Garuda, moved by the prince's sincerity, gave him the horse that had been the cause of his ancestors' downfall. "Return this to your king," he said. "It will restore your honor but not your peace. That you must still seek." Carrying the horse back to the palace, Anshuman felt the weight of his mission grow heavier, not lighter. He had reclaimed a piece of his family's honor, but the greater task loomed larger than ever. The souls of his ancestors still wandered, bound to the earth by the ashes that could not yet be washed away. In the quiet moments of the night, as the palace slept, Anshuman would gaze at the stars, his eyes searching for a sign, a glimmer of hope that the heavens might hear his prayers. And though the stars offered no answers, their light seemed to echo a promise. The story was far from over. The quest was his, but the outcome rested in hands far greater than his own. And so, the prince waited, his heart a reservoir of both hope and sorrow, knowing that his efforts would be the foundation for a legacy yet to be written. The air was still, almost unnaturally so, as if the world itself had paused to watch a man prepare to confront the impossible. Bhagiratha knelt on the parched earth, his body frail from years of penance, yet his spirit unyielding. The sun blazed mercilessly overhead, its heat a cruel reminder of the countless days he had spent under its unrelenting gaze. But Bhagiratha's eyes were not on the sun, they were closed, fixed inward, where his resolve burned brighter than any celestial fire. For generations, the curse of his ancestors had lingered like a shadow, heavy and suffocating. 60,000 restless souls called out to him in silence, their cries vibrating through his blood, through the very air he breathed. To them, he was their last hope, their final plea for peace. And so, Bhagiratha had cast aside the comforts of the palace, the luxuries of royalty, to become nothing more than a man with a purpose, an unshakable purpose. He had forsaken food, water, and shelter, standing unmoved against rain, wind, and searing heat. His austerities were not a display of his strength, but an offering, a testament to the depth of his devotion. The gods watched, their gazes heavy with both pity and awe. Mortal men were not meant to endure such torment, yet Bhagiratha's soul refused to bend. One night, beneath a sky strewn with stars that glittered like scattered diamonds, Bhagiratha sat cross-legged, his breath steady despite the gnawing hunger and exhaustion that clawed at him. The world around him had fallen silent, the usual hum of life replaced by an almost sacred stillness. It was in this moment, when the boundaries between man and cosmos seemed to blur, that the heavens finally stirred. The ground trembled faintly, as though acknowledging the arrival of a presence far greater than itself. A soft, radiant light began to envelop Bhagiratha, growing brighter with each passing moment until it illuminated the desolation around him. From the brilliance emerged Brahma, the creator, his form majestic yet gentle, his gaze filled with understanding. Brahma's voice, deep and resonant, seemed to echo from within Bhagiratha's very soul. "Your penance has reached us," he said, his words carrying the weight of divine acknowledgement. "Few mortals have shown such unwavering dedication. Speak, Bhagiratha. What do you seek?" Bhagiratha bowed low, his forehead touching the earth, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions raging within him. "O great Creator," he said, "I seek the descent of the celestial Ganges to cleanse the ashes of my ancestors and grant them liberation." Brahma's expression shifted, a mixture of admiration and caution. "The Ganges flows not only with water but with the force of the heavens themselves," he replied. "Her descent to the earth will be no simple task. The earth cannot withstand the torrent of her power." Bhagiratha's heart clenched, but his resolve did not waver. "Then tell me, O Lord," he pleaded, "what must I do to make this possible?" Brahma's gaze softened, his voice almost tender. "You must seek the help of Lord Shiva," he said. "Only he, with his boundless strength and compassion, can bear the impact of the Ganges' descent and guide her flow." With those words, Brahma vanished, leaving behind a silence that seemed louder than the fiercest storm. Bhagiratha remained where he knelt, his heart swelling with both hope and trepidation. His journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt the stirrings of possibility. As the night deepened, Bhagiratha rose to his feet, his steps unsteady but his determination unbroken. He began a new chapter of his penance, this time directed toward the one being capable of bridging the heavens and the earth. The stars above twinkled faintly, as if in quiet approval, their light a subtle reminder that even the smallest of sparks could illuminate the darkest of nights. The celestial waters shimmered in the heavens, a cascade of liquid light flowing endlessly in divine rhythm. The Ganges, revered as the holiest among rivers, danced with an ethereal grace, her waters whispering ancient songs of purity and creation. She was not bound by earthly constraints, she roamed freely in the realm of the gods, untouchable, untamed. Her spirit was as vast as the sky, her pride as deep as the ocean. Then came the call, carried on the winds of moral prayer. It was faint at first, a fragile plea that rose from the dust of the earth. But as the days turned into years and the prayers grew unrelenting, the heavens themselves seemed to echo the desperation below. Bhagiratha's devotion had reached her, and she knew what it meant. The Ganges paused in her flow, her brilliance dimming slightly, her waters heavy with thought. She understood the magnitude of what was being asked. To descend from the celestial realm to the mortal plane was no simple act, it was a surrender, a transformation. And she, the sacred Ganges, was not easily persuaded. When Brahma approached her, his voice calm but firm, she listened in silence. "The prayers of a prince have moved the heavens," he said. "The earth cries for your touch, Ganga. The souls of countless ancestors await your grace." Ganga's laughter rippled like 1,000 silver bells, but there was an edge to it, sharp and unyielding. You asked me to descend, she said, her voice carrying the weight of a tide. But do you know what that means? My flow is unbridled, my waters unstoppable. The earth cannot bear my force. To descend is to risk destruction. Shall I, in granting salvation, bring ruin to those who seek it? Brahma's gaze held hers, unflinching. The prince has sought Shiva's aid, he replied. The great Lord will bear your descent, temper your might, and guide your flow. Your strength will not be unchecked. Ganga's eyes narrowed, her currents swirling with defiance. And what of the earth? She challenged. What of the mortals who will tread my waters with careless feet, who will pollute my purity with their sins? Will they honor me, or will they use me? To descend is to make myself vulnerable, to invite desecration. Her voice grew softer, almost mournful. I am not just a river. I am sacred. To fall to the earth is to lose a part of myself. How can I trust that they will cherish what I give? Brahma, the creator, stood silent for a moment, his expression tinged with understanding. Your concerns are not without merit, he said at last. But your descent is not for them alone. It is for the souls who wait, for the prayers that rise, for the redemption of a lineage cursed by pride. It is a sacrifice, yes, but one that will ripple through eternity. Ganga's current stilled, her waters reflecting the light of the stars above. Sacrifice. The word lingered in her essence, heavy yet profound. She thought of the countless lives she had touched in her celestial form, the blessings she had bestowed without ever descending. Could she trust the mortal world to honor her, to protect what she would give? Her hesitation was palpable, a tension that hung in the air like the moments before a storm. But deep within, she felt the pull of something greater, an unspoken promise that her descent would be more than an act of giving, it would be an act of transformation, for herself and for those she touched. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but resolute. If I descend, it will be on my terms, she said. I will flow as I must, and the earth must bear me. Let Shiva, the destroyer and protector, take my weight, for only he is worthy. But know this, those who abuse my gift will face my wrath. I will cleanse, but I will not tolerate defilement. Brahma nodded, his expression both solemn and relieved. Your will shall be honored, he said. The prince awaits, and so does the earth. Your descent will change the course of history. As Ganga resumed her celestial dance, her thoughts were no longer entirely her own. A flicker of anticipation mingled with her reluctance, a strange and unfamiliar emotion she could not name. Below, the mortal world waited, its cries growing louder, its prayers more fervent. And somewhere, Bhajaratha stood beneath the open sky, his hands folded, his head bowed, unaware of the storm brewing in the heavens, a storm that would bring both salvation and reckoning. The night sky stretched endlessly, stars flickering like distant embers against the vast black canvas. Bhajaratha stood on a desolate mountaintop, his body trembling from exhaustion but his eyes fierce with unrelenting determination. The winds howled around him, cold and biting, as if testing his resolve. Yet he stood firm, a lone figure against the vastness of creation, whispering prayers into the void. His voice cracked with fatigue but carried the weight of centuries. Mahadev, he called out, his hands clasped in supplication. Bearer of the crescent moon, wielder of the trident, protector of the cosmos, hear my plea. I ask not for power, nor wealth, but for mercy, for my ancestors and for the earth. The silence that followed was deafening, each heartbeat a thunderclap in Bhajaratha's ears. His mind replayed the stories he had heard as a child, tales of Shiva's unyielding strength and boundless compassion. He clung to those tales now, hoping against hope that the god would answer him. And then, it happened. The air around him grew heavy, charged with an energy that made his skin prickle. The mountain seemed to tremble beneath his feet, not out of fear, but as if bowing in reverence. A faint glow appeared on the horizon, growing brighter with each passing moment. The wind stilled, replaced by a profound stillness that seemed to hold its breath. When Shiva appeared, it was as though the universe itself had paused to witness. Draped in tiger skin, his matted hair coiled high and crowned with the crescent moon, Shiva's presence was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. His eyes burned with the fire of 1,000 suns, yet his expression held a calmness that soothed the soul. A cobra coiled around his neck, its hood flared as if guarding the cosmic balance embodied in its master. Bhajaratha fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, not from fear but from the overwhelming realization that he was in the presence of the destroyer, the protector, the eternal one. Words failed him, his voice choked by emotion. But Shiva, in his infinite understanding, did not need words. "Rise, Bhajaratha," Shiva said, his voice resonating like the rolling of thunder across the heavens. It was neither loud nor soft, yet it carried the weight of eternity. "Your devotion has reached even the heavens. Speak your heart." Bhajaratha looked up, his voice trembling but resolute. "Lord Shiva," he began, "the Ganges, the celestial river, must descend to the earth to cleanse the sins of my ancestors and grant them liberation. But her force is beyond what the earth can endure. Only you, O Mahadev, can bear her descent and temper her might." For a moment, Shiva said nothing, his gaze piercing, as if looking into Bhajaratha's very soul. Then, a faint smile played on his lips, a smile that held both compassion and a hint of the challenge to come. "The Ganges is fierce and untamed," Shiva said. "Her descent will be a torrent, unrelenting and destructive. To contain her is no small task. Do you understand the enormity of what you ask?" Bhajaratha bowed his head. "I understand, my lord. But I have no other recourse. The burden of my ancestors weighs heavy upon me, and I cannot abandon them. If it costs my life, so be it." Shiva's smile grew, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "You have shown courage and selflessness, Bhajaratha. Very well. I shall bear the Ganges upon my matted locks and guide her descent. But know this, her temper is not easily tamed. Even in this act of grace, the earth must be prepared for her arrival." As Shiva spoke, the crescent moon on his forehead seemed to glow brighter, casting a silvery light over the mountain. The cobra around his neck uncoiled slightly, its movements slow and deliberate, as if sensing the magnitude of what was about to unfold. With a sudden burst of energy, Shiva struck the ground with his trident, and the earth seemed to resonate with his power. The wind swirled in an ecstatic dance, the stars above shimmering as if in approval. Bhajaratha felt a wave of awe wash over him, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "Prepare yourself," Shiva said, his voice tinged with both warning and assurance. "The Ganges will come, but her fury must not be underestimated. I shall do my part, but the rest lies with you and the earth." As Shiva began to ascend, his form glowing with divine radiance, Bhajaratha prostrated himself once more, his heart swelling with gratitude. The night had changed him, not just as a prince or a devotee, but as a mortal who had witnessed the boundless power and grace of the divine. Far above, the heavens seemed to hum with anticipation. The Ganges, though reluctant, stirred in her celestial abode, her currents shifting as if preparing for a journey that would change the course of history forever. And beneath the watchful gaze of the stars, Bhajaratha remained, his prayers now laced with hope, knowing that the next chapter of his quest was about to begin. Shiva stood still, his presence a vast and ancient weight in the midst of the universe, yet his heart was light, unburdened by time. The mountains below quivered in awe, the stars above seemed to bow in reverence. The moment stretched, eternal, as if the cosmos itself held its breath. For a fleeting moment, it seemed as though even the universe had waited for this one moment. The Ganges, the river of life, the purifier of souls, was descending to the earth. Her power, her fury, and her grace would soon be unleashed. And yet, it was Shiva, the great Mahadev, the lord of the dance, the destroyer and creator, who stood at the heart of it all, prepared to bear the weight of the heavens. Bhajaratha's eyes were filled with silent prayers, his heart pounding as the god before him spoke softly. "The Ganges is mighty, Bhajaratha. Her descent will be like no other. Her waters can destroy, yet they can heal. It is not an easy task I take upon myself, but I will receive her upon my matted locks, and I will protect the earth." The earth trembled beneath their feet, but the ground was not shaking from fear. No, it was the anticipation of what was to come. The divine promise had been made. Shiva's decision had been reached. His cosmic dance, the dance that had sustained the universe since the beginning of time, would now serve to receive the Ganges. In the moments that followed, the very atmosphere seemed to change. The air grew thick with energy, crackling with the tension of divine power. Shiva, the Lord of Dance, slowly raised his arms, his body swaying with a rhythm that had no beginning or end. His movements were slow at first, like the gentle stir of the earth's first breath. His matted hair, adorned with the crescent moon, seemed to shimmer, as if recognizing the weight of the sacred task that was to come. And then, with a sudden shift, his dance began to grow more intense, more powerful. Each movement was a symphony of creation and destruction. The heavens themselves seemed to spin in response to his every step. The mountains shook, not from fear, but from awe, as if they were learning the very heartbeat of existence through his motions. The divine cobra that coiled around his neck unfurled, its hood spreading wide in preparation, as if to shield the earth from the overwhelming force of what was to come. Shiva's trident gleamed in the moonlight, each of its 3 prongs representing creation, preservation, and destruction. And in the center of it all, Shiva, with his cosmic dance, would hold the balance. As his foot came down, the earth below seemed to shift, as though the very fabric of time and space was bending to his will. The stars above twinkled brighter, the winds rose in a chorus, and the very air seemed to hum with the power of the moment. It was a moment when Shiva, the destroyer of illusions, the protector of truth, became the mediator between heaven and earth. And then, it began. The Ganges, in her celestial form, began to stir. Her waters, once calm and placid, began to surge, as if she felt the pull of Shiva's cosmic dance. The river, the lifeblood of the universe, prepared to descend from her celestial home, her currents wild with anticipation. Shiva's dance continued. The rhythmic beat of his movement matched the rhythm of the universe itself. As each step landed, the ground beneath him became a stage for the unfolding drama of existence. His hair swirled, and the Ganges began her descent. The mighty river, in all her fury and grace, began to fall. But Shiva, with his graceful movements, held her in balance. He did not resist her force, but rather, he absorbed it. His matted locks, once a symbol of his asceticism, now became a sacred net for the river's descent. Each strand of his hair caught the torrents of the Ganges, and with each passing moment, the river slowed, her flow tempered by Shiva's divine mediation. The heavens watched in awe, the gods themselves silent as they saw Shiva perform the ultimate act of grace. His cosmic dance, the same dance that had sustained the universe, now took on a new meaning. It was no longer just the dance of creation and destruction, it was the dance of protection, of love, of selflessness. Bhagiratha, still kneeling, now looked upon Shiva with tears in his eyes. He had asked for the impossible, to bring the Ganges to earth, and to do so without causing devastation. And here, before him, Shiva was performing that very miracle, holding the Ganges in his divine locks, taming her fury with every graceful movement. As the waters of the Ganges continued to pour down from the heavens, Shiva's locks spread out like an intricate web, catching the waters and holding them with an ease that belied their power. The river, once wild and unstoppable, now flowed gently, her force tempered by the Lord of the Dance. The earth below seemed to breathe again, the air heavy with the sense of something sacred being born. Shiva's eyes closed for a moment, lost in the beauty of the moment. His dance, now slow and measured, became the very pulse of the world. Each beat of his feet reverberated across the universe, each movement a delicate thread woven into the fabric of existence. The river, the mountains, the sky, and the stars, they all seemed to move together in perfect harmony, bound by the rhythm of Shiva's cosmic dance. And in that moment, it was clear that Shiva was not merely a god of destruction. He was the protector, the mediator, the one who bridged the gap between the heavens and the earth. His dance was the heartbeat of the cosmos, and his divine intervention had ensured that the Ganges, the river of life, could descend to the earth without bringing ruin. In the stillness that followed, the earth seemed to exhale. The storm had passed, the torrent tempered, and in the distance, the first soft ripple of the Ganges could be heard, flowing gently, as if the river had been reborn. The sky above trembled. The earth below seemed to hold its breath as the mighty Ganges began her descent. It wasn't just a river, no, this was the very essence of life, purity, and destruction. Her waters, once calm in their celestial home, now surged with untold power, ready to come crashing down onto the earth. The world had never seen anything like it. And yet, there was Shiva, standing like a pillar of unwavering strength, his arms raised in perfect rhythm, moving as if the dance of the universe flowed through him. With every beat of his cosmic steps, the ground beneath his feet shifted. His body swirled, not in fear, but in quiet determination. He was the one who would bear the weight of this tremendous force. The river, the Ganges, came down in a thunderous roar, her waters racing like an untamable beast breaking free from its chains. There was a flash of white foam, the kind that only the wildest of storms could create. The heavens themselves shuddered in awe as the divine river hurtled toward the earth with a velocity that could tear apart mountains. A sight so fierce, it would make even the gods pause. And in the midst of it all, Shiva, calm as the moon on a silent night, prepared to receive her. Bhagiratha, the noble king who had braved so much, stood in silence, his heart in his throat. His prayers, whispered with urgency, seemed to vanish into the air, drowned by the roar of the falling river. His hope had brought him this far, but would it be enough? Could the earth withstand this sacred fury? The Ganges was not just a river, she was a force of nature. Her descent was not gentle, nor was it meant to be. She came down with all the might of 1,000 storms. Yet, as her waters drew nearer to the earth, Shiva's matted hair, those locks that had held the entire universe in balance for eons, reached upward, a divine net. One by one, they caught the torrents. Like a master weaver, Shiva controlled the chaotic flow with a grace that defied all understanding. Each drop of water that fell from the heavens carried a tremendous force. The mighty river, who had cleansed and nourished the worlds above, had now come to give life to the earth below. But in her rush to meet the ground, she brought with her not just the gift of life, but the potential for destruction. The land would be torn apart, villages drowned, trees uprooted, mountains flattened, if not for Shiva's intervention. As the first wave of the river's power approached, the heavens seemed to crack open, a deep rumble filling the air. It was as though the universe itself feared the arrival of this unstoppable force. But Shiva stood unwavering. His calmness was not the absence of power, but the embodiment of it. With every movement of his hair caught the flowing waters, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to hold still in silent wonder. The Ganges, mighty, furious, unstoppable, met Shiva's locks. The two forces clashed, and for an instant, it seemed as if the entire world would break apart. But Shiva's body, dancing with cosmic precision, absorbed the impact. The river's flow was caught in his hair, and the waters, once destined to flood the earth with wrath, were held back. The sheer volume of water was enough to drown cities, to shake mountains to their core. But Shiva's hair, each lock a thread of the universe's balance, held firm. His dance was not wild or frantic, it was slow, deliberate, like a soft lullaby in the midst of a raging storm. His movements tamed the ferocity of the river's flow. The waters began to slow, to soften, as if they realized they had found a place of refuge in the divine locks of the god who held them. Bhagiratha watched in awe, his heart pounding in his chest. He had prayed, he had suffered, and now he saw the miracle unfolding before his very eyes. The Ganges, once a terrifying torrent, was slowly being contained, her destructive power softened, tempered by Shiva's divine intervention. The balance between chaos and order was being restored. As the water began to flow more gently, Shiva continued to dance, each step resonating with the pulse of the universe. The earth seemed to hum along with him, the mountains and the trees swaying in rhythm, the very sky bending to the will of the divine. The river's descent had been brutal, but under Shiva's grace, the earth was spared. What could have been a flood of death had instead become a river of life, flowing gently as it was tamed by the god who had mastered time itself. The matted locks of Shiva, which had once held the weight of the heavens, now held the weight of the world. Each strand of hair cradled the river, preventing her from crashing down with all her fury. It was a slow, sacred process, no rush, no hurry. Shiva moved with the river, his steps a dance of protection, of grace, of unconditional love for the world he had sworn to protect. The Ganges, her waters now gentle and serene, flowed through Shiva's locks, as if she herself had found her peace in the care of the one who could hold all things in balance. The deafening roar of the descent had turned to a soft murmur, a soothing sound, like the sigh of the earth after a storm. Bhagiratha, unable to contain the overwhelming flood of emotions within him, fell to his knees. Tears streamed down his face, for he knew that this moment was the culmination of all his struggles, of all his sacrifices. Shiva had done it. He had tamed the Ganges, held her safely in his locks, and prevented destruction. The river, now calm, would flow to the earth, bringing life and prosperity to the land. The miracle had been achieved, and it was Shiva, the cosmic dancer, who had made it all possible. The earth, once trembling with the fear of the Ganges' mighty descent, now stood still in awe, watching as the river was cradled gently, flowing from Shiva's divine locks like a gift to the world. The world seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation, as Shiva, the great cosmic dancer, stood poised, cradling the mighty Ganges within his matted locks. His eyes were calm, steady, like the eternal gaze of the universe itself. The river, once a torrential storm of fury, had softened, her power now flowing gently, as if she had been lulled by the divine rhythm of Shiva's dance. The earth was silent, as if nature itself awaited the moment when the Ganges would be released, when she would finally flow freely, bringing her life-giving waters to the lands below. For a moment, it seemed as though time stood still. The river, trapped in Shiva's locks, was no longer the wild, uncontrollable force she had once been. She had found her place, her home, within the divine, and it was from this sacred space that she would soon be allowed to flow. But before this could happen, Shiva knew there was one final act, a delicate release, one that would guide the Ganges onto the earth in all her grace, her beauty, and her power. With a deep breath, Shiva raised his hands, his fingers brushing against the sky, as though calling forth the heavens to bear witness to this moment. Slowly, as if savoring every second, he began to release the river. His hair, once an impenetrable net of divine energy, began to loosen, and the water, once contained, now began to flow gently, like a long-held sigh finally escaping. The first drop fell from his locks, a single bead of water that seemed to shimmer with the weight of the world. It was followed by another, and then another, as Shiva's divine dance softened, each movement now slow, deliberate, and tender. The Ganges, once a fierce, unstoppable torrent, now moved like a gentle stream, flowing from Shiva's hair with the grace of a mother cradling her child in her arms. As the river began to trickle down, the earth beneath her quivered, not with fear, but with a quiet reverence. She had come to bring life, not destruction. The power she had once carried, a power that had threatened to split the world asunder, was now tempered, guided by Shiva's hands. The world beneath her would never be the same. She would bring with her the promise of renewal, of healing, and of prosperity. The moment was so delicate, so sacred, it seemed as though the universe itself paused to witness the grace with which Shiva guided the river. The water flowed, soft yet insistent, like the touch of a lover's hand after years of separation. Each drop was a promise, a prayer, a blessing. The river began to carve its path through the land, its flow steady and sure, her waters nourishing the earth, filling the dry riverbeds, and giving life to the parched soil. Bhagiratha, standing nearby, watched in awe as the Ganges, the mighty river he had prayed for, the river that had once been untamed, now flowed gently at Shiva's command. He had spent years in penance, battling his own doubts, his own exhaustion, and yet here, before him, was the miracle he had longed for. The river was no longer a harbinger of chaos, she was a gift. A gift of life, of love, and of hope. The Ganges, her once violent torrents now calmed, began to flow through the land, touching every part of the earth with her cool embrace. She moved like a mother's gentle touch, tracing the contours of the earth, bringing life to all that she touched. Her waters, which had once threatened to flood the world with destruction, now brought abundance. Crops would grow, children would drink from her, and people would bathe in her sacred waters, finding peace and purity in her depths. But even as she flowed gently, there was a power to her, a quiet, unyielding strength that came from the very heart of the cosmos. She was the embodiment of life itself, of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Her waters held the secrets of the universe, of the cycles of time, of birth and death, of beginnings and endings. She was everything, and yet she was nothing. She was the river, and she was the sky. She was Shiva's divine creation, and she was the earth's gift. As the Ganges continued her descent, Shiva stood silently, his eyes closed in quiet contemplation. He knew that his work was not yet done. His dance, his grace, had brought the river to the earth, but she would need guidance, protection, and care. The earth was vast, and the river, though flowing gently now, would encounter obstacles along her path. There would be moments of turbulence, of struggle, but she would endure. For she was not just any river. She was Ganga, the goddess of purity, the divine river that carried with her the essence of the cosmos itself. The land she touched would be blessed. The people who bathed in her waters would be healed. And in return, the river would be honored, revered, and loved for all eternity. The story of Ganga's descent from the heavens had come to an end, but it was only the beginning of her journey on earth. As she flowed from Shiva's matted locks, it was as though the heavens themselves had bent down to kiss the earth, bringing with them the promise of new life, of hope, and of grace. In the distance, Bhagiratha's heart swelled with gratitude and awe. His dreams had been realized, but he knew that the river was not his to claim. She was a gift to all of humanity, a gift that would sustain the world for generations to come. The river flowed, steady and calm, a river that had been tamed by Shiva's divine hands, and yet still held the same ancient power that could shape the world itself. And as Ganga descended, Shiva's dance continued, a dance that would never cease, for the universe itself was a dance, and in that dance, the Ganges would always flow. The air was still as Bhagiratha took his first step forward, the ground beneath him cool and firm, the weight of countless prayers now resting on his shoulders. Behind him, a miracle was in motion, a river, sacred and eternal, flowing with a divine serenity that defied its earlier fury. The Ganges, a goddess in her own right, moved like a graceful dancer, her waters weaving their way through the land, each rippled a hymn to creation. Bhagiratha did not look back. He could feel her presence, her life-giving flow, as though she were breathing alongside him. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense of purpose that surged through him. He had prayed, fasted, and endured, his faith had summoned the river from the heavens, and now he was leading her to fulfill her destiny. The Ganges followed him like a shadow, her waters shimmering in the sunlight, catching the colors of the sky. Wherever she touched, the earth seemed to awaken. Dry, cracked riverbeds filled with her cool embrace, and parched fields drank deeply of her life-giving flow. Trees, long silent and withered, began to hum with renewed energy, their roots reaching hungrily for the sacred waters. Animals emerged cautiously, their eyes wide with wonder, as if sensing the presence of divinity in the air. Villagers gathered along her path, their hands folded in reverence, their eyes glistening with tears. Some whispered prayers of gratitude, while others simply stood in awe, their voices stolen by the sight of the divine river moving through their lands. They had heard of Bhagiratha's unwavering penance, of his pleas to Shiva and the gods, and now they bore witness to the fruit of his devotion. Mothers dipped their children into the water, fathers cupped their hands to drink, and the old wept openly, knowing they were witnessing something far greater than themselves. The Ganges was not content to merely follow. Along her path, she stretched and reached, her waters splitting and branching, creating tributaries that cradled the land in a gentle embrace. Each branch of her flow became a sacred river, carrying her divine energy into the farthest corners of the earth. It was as though she understood that her purpose was not singular but vast, her blessings meant for all who lived. She moved with an intelligence that was both gentle and commanding, her waters shaping the land and the hearts of the people she touched. Bhagiratha's journey was not without its trials. The path ahead was often treacherous, filled with rocky cliffs and narrow passes. Yet, the river did not falter. Where the way seemed impassable, her waters surged forward, carving through the rock, smoothing jagged edges, and forging new paths where none had existed. Her persistence was a reflection of Bhagiratha's own resolve, her flow a testament to the strength of his devotion. There were moments when Bhagiratha paused, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what was unfolding around him. He would turn to see the Ganges behind him, her flow steady and sure, her waters glistening as if kissed by the stars. In those moments, he felt a connection to something eternal, something that transcended his mortal frame. It was as though the river was not just following him, but guiding him as well, her presence a constant reminder of the divine will that had set this moment into motion. The journey was more than a passage through land, it was a transformation. As Bhagiratha led the Ganges, he could feel the burden of his ancestors lifting, their spirits stirred to life by the sacred river's touch. The cries of his forefathers, once echoes of despair, now carried the sweetness of relief. Their redemption was near, and Bhagiratha's steps grew lighter with each passing moment. The land began to change in subtle yet profound ways. Flowers bloomed where there had been only dust, their petals soft and vibrant as if painted by the heavens. The air grew sweeter, carrying the scent of life renewed. Even the wind seemed to sing, their melodies weaving through the rustling leaves and the bubbling streams, as though nature itself was rejoicing in the Ganges' descent. As Bhagiratha pressed onward, the river's flow mirrored his resolve, unwavering and full of purpose. Her waters carried the weight of myths and stories, of creation and destruction, of endings and beginnings. She was not merely a river, she was a promise, a bond between the heavens and the earth, between the gods and humanity. And in her flow was the unspoken understanding that she belonged to all, her blessings infinite and unconditional. Night fell, and yet the river glowed, her waters catching the light of the moon and turning it into liquid silver. Bhagiratha rested by her banks, the sound of her gentle flow lulling him into a peace he had not known in years. He watched as her waters carried small offerings, flowers, leaves, and prayers whispered into the night sky. It was in these quiet moments that he felt her power most deeply, not in her grandeur but in her quiet, unyielding grace. The people who had gathered to witness her flow did not leave, even as the darkness enveloped the land. They lit lamps along her banks, their small flames reflecting on her surface, creating a shimmering dance of light and shadow. It was as though the river had become a living temple, her waters the sacred altar where prayers were carried to the heavens. As dawn broke, Bhagiratha rose, his resolve as steady as the Ganges herself. The river glowed golden in the morning light, her waters brimming with the energy of a new day. Her flow had become a lifeline for the earth, her presence a blessing for all who walked upon it. Bhagiratha knew that the journey was far from over, but he also knew that the river's flow was unstoppable. She had come to fulfill her purpose, and nothing could stand in her way. In the distance, the horizon beckoned, and Bhagiratha took another step, the river flowing behind him, her waters carving sacred paths into the heart of the earth. The air was thick with an unspoken tension as Bhagiratha approached the desolate expanse where the ashes of his ancestors lay scattered. The ground was silent, holding the weight of an ancient sorrow that seemed to echo in the very stones. These were not merely remnants of life, they were the remains of a tragedy, a curse, and a plea that had gone unanswered for generations. It was a place forgotten by time, but not by pain. Behind Bhagiratha, the Ganges flowed with a quiet grace, her waters shimmering under the pale light of the morning sun. The closer she came to the sacred spot, the more the air seemed to hum with energy. There was no mistaking her purpose now. She carried within her the power to cleanse not just the earth, but the sins and sorrows of lifetimes. Her flow was gentle but unyielding, and as she neared, it was as though the very earth stirred in anticipation. Bhagiratha knelt, his forehead touching the ground. He whispered a prayer, his voice trembling with emotion. He had done all he could. He had endured trials, sought divine favor, and led the goddess herself to this place of despair. Now, all that remained was faith. The Ganges slowed as she approached, her waters almost hesitant, as if sensing the weight of the moment. Then, with a soft murmur, she flowed into the cursed land. The transformation was immediate and overwhelming. The moment her waters touched the ashes, a soft, golden light began to radiate from the ground. It was not blinding but warm and soothing, like the first rays of dawn after a long, cold night. The air filled with the faint sound of bells, their chimes soft yet resounding, as though the heavens themselves were rejoicing. The ashes seemed to dissolve, carried gently by the sacred waters, and with them, the curse that had bound these souls for so long. From the depths of the earth, there came a sound, soft at first, like a distant hum, but growing louder and more harmonious. It was the voices of Sagara's sons, no longer filled with anguish, but with gratitude and peace. Their spirits, once trapped in the cycle of despair, began to rise, glowing forms that seemed to shimmer with the purity of the divine light. They stood tall, their faces serene, their eyes filled with the knowledge that they were finally free. The Ganges did not rush, she moved with the patience of eternity, ensuring that every trace of sorrow was washed away. As her waters carried the last remnants of the ashes, the earth seemed to sigh in relief, the burden it had borne for centuries finally lifted. The sons of Sagara bowed deeply, their forms radiating a divine glow. They looked to Bhagiratha, their savior, and their gazes were filled with a love that words could never express. Bhagiratha felt tears streaming down his face. He had carried the weight of his ancestors' pain, their longing for liberation, and now, in this moment, it was all worth it. The Ganges, too, seemed to glow brighter, her flow steady and calm, as if satisfied with the fulfillment of her divine purpose. The spirits of the sons turned toward her, folding their hands in reverence. They whispered their thanks to the goddess, their voices blending with the flow of her waters, creating a melody that seemed to linger in the air. As the spirits began to ascend, their forms dissolved into the golden light, merging with the infinite. They were no longer bound to the earth or their past, they had attained moksha, the ultimate liberation. The heavens opened, a pathway of light stretching beyond sight, welcoming the souls into eternal peace. It was not an end, but a beginning, a return to the divine source from which they had come. The villagers who had followed Bhagiratha watched in awe, their hearts swelling with emotions they could not name. Some wept openly, their tears falling into the sacred river, while others stood silently, their hands pressed together in prayer. They knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, a moment that would be told and retold for generations. It was not just the salvation of Sagara's sons, it was a testament to faith, perseverance, and the boundless grace of the divine. The Ganges continued to flow, her waters clear and pristine, as if carrying away not just the ashes but every trace of sorrow that had tainted this land. The ground where the ashes had lain was now lush and fertile, vibrant with life. Flowers bloomed in hues of gold and crimson, their fragrance mingling with the fresh scent of the river. Birds sang as if celebrating, their melodies echoing across the land. Bhagiratha stood, his hands trembling but his heart full. He turned to face the Ganges, and for a moment, their gazes seemed to meet. There was no need for words, the bond between them was unspoken but unbreakable. She had answered his prayers, granted his ancestors peace, and in doing so, she had given him the greatest gift, a legacy of devotion and redemption. As the last rays of the setting sun bathed the land in a warm glow, the Ganges continued her journey, her flow unceasing. She moved onward, carving new paths, blessing new lands, her waters carrying the memory of what had transpired. Bhagiratha followed, his steps lighter, his purpose fulfilled, yet knowing that the story of the Ganges was far from over. Her waters touched the earth like a mother's first caress, gentle yet profound. From the icy cradle of the Himalayas, she began her descent, weaving her way through valleys and plains, carrying life in her embrace. Wherever she flowed, the land awakened. Crops sprung forth as if the soil itself had been waiting for her touch, parched fields transformed into thriving farms, and barren lands burst into vibrant greens. Her journey was not just a course, it was a blessing, one that turned dust into abundance. In the cool dawn of a village nestled along her banks, an old farmer stood barefoot at the edge of her waters. His face was weathered by time, but his eyes held gratitude as he cupped his hands, drawing her waters to his lips. This ritual wasn't just tradition, it was communion. She was more than a river, she was the sustainer, the reason his fields bore grain, his cattle thrived, and his children lived. For centuries, she had been this provider, protector, and purifier. In the cities that rose along her course, life thrived in a different rhythm. Bustling marketplaces hummed with activity, vibrant with the chatter of merchants and the laughter of children. The river, winding her way through these urban hearts, was a lifeline. Boats laden with goods drifted on her surface, connecting distant lands and creating a flow of trade that brought prosperity. Temples stood along her banks, their bells echoing across the water, their steps leading down into her sacred embrace. For the devout, her waters were not just for sustenance, they were salvation. Each dip washed away more than dust, it cleansed the soul, dissolving burdens as the current carried them away. Her flow wasn't always gentle. During monsoons, she roared with the might of a goddess scorned, her swollen waters carving paths anew. The power she unleashed was terrifying yet awe-inspiring, a reminder of her dual nature. She was the giver of life, but also the wielder of destruction. Villages were swept away, but in her wake, she left soil so fertile that even devastation carried the seeds of rebirth. For those who lived along her course, she was a force to be revered, her moods both feared and cherished. Under the moon's watchful gaze, her waters shimmered like liquid silver, whispering secrets of time. Along her banks, stories unfolded of love and loss, of beginnings and endings. A young couple sat under the shade of a banyan tree, their hands entwined as they listened to the river's song. She was the silent witness to their vows, the keeper of moments that would one day fade into memory. Her presence was timeless, eternal, her flow a reminder that life moves forward, no matter the sorrow or joy. In her depths, she carried more than water. She bore the ashes of those who sought freedom from the cycle of life and death, their last wishes entrusted to her current. She carried the prayers of millions, whispered into her ripples, and the tears of countless hearts broken along her shores. Yet, for all she bore, she never stopped. Her resilience was unmatched, her flow unbroken, her journey ceaseless. As she moved through the plains, she nurtured civilizations. Empires rose and fell, their stories etched in the ruins along her banks. Kings built palaces and fortresses by her side, drawn by her lifeblood. She was the muse of poets, the inspiration of artists, the sanctuary of sages. Her influence was boundless, shaping the culture, faith, and destiny of those who depended on her. Children played in her shallows, their laughter mingling with the rhythm of her flow. Women gathered at dawn, their pots balanced on their heads, their voices lifted in songs of devotion. Fishermen cast their nets, their lives interwoven with her bounty. Every life she touched became a thread in the intricate tapestry she wove along her course. Her waters didn't just sustain, they united. People from different lands, speaking different tongues, shared the same reverence for her. She was a bond that transcended boundaries, her flow a reminder of the shared humanity she sustained. At dusk, her banks became places of reflection. Fires burned as priests chanted mantras, the flames mirrored in her ripples. She carried the offerings, flowers, oil lamps, prayers, further along her course, merging them into her essence. Her flow was a canvas, each moment painted with the lives she touched. Her journey was a testament to her endurance. Through the centuries, she had seen it all, glory and ruin, faith and despair. Yet she flowed on, unchanged in her purpose, unwavering in her grace. She didn't seek praise or gratitude, she simply gave, her waters a gift that sustained without expectation. As her waters stretched towards the horizon, there was no end to her influence. She was a force that connected the land to the heavens, the past to the future, the living to the divine. Her journey continued, her flow unyielding, her purpose eternal. And as she moved forward, she carried with her the dreams, hopes, and prayers of all who lived along her sacred path. The first rays of dawn kissed the waters, turning them into threads of gold. The river flowed gently, whispering ancient songs that only the heart could hear. Her touch was not merely water, it was a connection to something far greater. She carried within her not just life, but a promise of renewal, of hope, of blessings immeasurable. For the pilgrim kneeling on her banks, the Ganges was absolution. Hands folded, eyes closed, the pilgrim felt her cool touch on the skin and something deeper, a weight lifting, a burden dissolving. She was not just a river, she was a purifier, a lifeline to the soul. Each drop carried centuries of prayers, a sacredness that no earthly force could diminish. Her blessings extended far beyond the spiritual. Along her shores, life flourished. Trees stood tall and proud, their roots nourished by her flow. Birds sang their songs in branches that reached out over her waters, their melodies blending with the river's gentle murmur. She was the mother of ecosystems, her life-giving waters nurturing creatures great and small. Fish darted beneath her surface, their scales glinting like jewels, while deer came to drink at twilight, their movements graceful and unhurried. But it wasn't just the wilderness that thrived. Villages, towns, and cities drew their lifeblood from her, their people living in harmony with her presence. The farmer blessed her for the bountiful harvest his fields produced, her waters seeping into the earth and transforming it into a cradle of abundance. The potter shaped clay made pliable by her moisture, creating vessels that bore the mark of her blessing. The mother prayed over her child, bathing the infant in her sacred waters, believing that her touch would protect and strengthen. In her blessings, she united. Festivals lit her banks with countless oil lamps, their flickering flames a reflection of devotion. Men, women, and children gathered in vibrant attire, their voices raised in song, their hearts joined in gratitude. Her waters carried these offerings of faith, her current blending them into an eternal flow of love and connection. She brought together the distant and the different, weaving a tapestry of shared humanity. Her cultural heartbeat was unmistakable. Stories of her divine origin passed from generation to generation, her name spoken with reverence in temples and homes alike. She was not merely a part of the landscape, she was the essence of identity. Poets wrote verses inspired by her majesty, her flow symbolizing life's continuity. Painters tried to capture her grace, their colors unable to match her living brilliance. Musicians sang of her power and compassion, their melodies echoing her eternal rhythm. And yet, for all her beauty, she bore the weight of human frailty. Offerings of flowers and incense sometimes mingled with less sacred remnants, a quiet plea for her forgiveness evident in the acts of the faithful. But she continued, unyielding in her purpose, transforming what she carried into nourishment for the earth. Her blessings were a testament to resilience. When the monsoons came, her currents swelled with ferocity, spreading across the land with unstoppable force. It was during these times that her duality revealed itself, blessing and challenge intertwined. While her floods tested the strength of those who lived by her, they also replenished the soil, a cycle of destruction and creation that mirrored life itself. The devout believed that her touch could break the chains of karma, freeing the soul to ascend to realms unknown. Ashes carried to her waters were not mere remnants, they were hopes, prayers, and a yearning for liberation. Her embrace was said to guide the departed, her currents ferrying them to a place of peace. In the quiet moments, her blessings were felt most profoundly. A child skipping stones across her surface, an elderly couple sitting silently on her banks, the soft laughter of friends as they splashed in her shallows, these were not grand gestures but simple, sacred moments. She was a witness to love, to joy, to the quiet endurance of life's challenges. Her presence reminded all who touched her of the beauty in the ordinary. And so, she flowed, unceasing and unstoppable. She gave without question, blessed without demand, sustained without pause. Her waters were a hymn, her journey a blessing, her existence a testament to the boundless grace of life. She was the river, the giver, the eternal. The winds whispered through the Himalayan peaks, carrying a chill that seemed to touch the soul. In the silence of the lofty heights stood Shiva, his presence both profound and unyielding. He was not just a figure on the mountain, he was the mountain, the silence, the vastness of the universe itself. His matted locks cascaded down his back, an eternal reminder of his cosmic role, and within them stirred a secret that would bind heaven, earth, and the divine. Shiva was more than the one who tamed the mighty Ganga. He was balance incarnate. His stillness was not emptiness but the calm of unshakable strength. His acceptance of Ganga's fierce descent symbolized the ultimate act of grace, the ability to take on what others could not bear, to transform chaos into harmony. He did not resist her, nor did he let her destroy. He absorbed her force, holding her in his locks, channeling her wild, unbridled energy into a flow that nurtured life. To see Shiva in this story is to understand the essence of surrender and control. His act was not one of dominance but of compassion. He accepted Ganga's fury, her pride, and her resistance with the serenity of a being who understood that power, unchecked, could devastate. Yet, he did not suppress her. Instead, he guided her, allowing her to flow in a way that would bring life instead of ruin. He taught that strength lies not in conquest but in the ability to transform and uplift. Shiva's symbolism reaches deeper than the act itself. He is the mediator between opposites, the bridge between the finite and the infinite. He sits in meditation, yet his dance, Tandava, shakes the cosmos. In one hand, he holds the drum, creating the rhythm of life, in another, the fire, signaling the inevitable end. Yet, in this duality, he is whole. Ganga's story reflects this balance. Her flow represents life, but without Shiva's intervention, it could have brought destruction. He is the pivot around which the world turns, the steady hand that keeps the wheel in motion. For those who come to him in prayer, Shiva is more than a deity, he is a guide. His acceptance of Ganga mirrors the acceptance he offers to humanity. He does not demand perfection, he does not ask for devotion born of fear. He asks for honesty, for the willingness to seek, to question, to transform. His act of receiving Ganga is an eternal reminder that even the fiercest storms can find calm, that even the most unyielding forces can be guided. In this act, Shiva also embodies the protector. When Ganga threatened to overwhelm, he became the shield, not for himself but for the world. His matted locks are not mere adornments, they are symbols of his ability to contain what others cannot. He bore her weight so the earth would not. He absorbed her chaos so life could thrive. His selflessness is not grand, it is quiet, profound, and deeply moving. But there is more. Shiva's role in the Ganges story is a reminder of humanity's relationship with nature. He teaches that nature is not to be conquered but understood, respected, and cherished. His interaction with Ganga is a testament to this balance. He does not overpower her, he partners with her, guiding her energy in a way that serves the greater good. Through him, we see the possibility of harmony between man and the natural world, a lesson as relevant now as it was then. His symbolism extends to the spiritual. Ganga's descent onto his locks signifies the soul's journey through the chaos of existence, finding refuge in the calm of divine grace. Shiva's act is not just about water flowing to the earth, it is about the flow of wisdom, love, and compassion. He becomes the conduit, the anchor, the one who ensures that this divine essence reaches humanity without being lost in the tumult. And yet, for all his cosmic significance, Shiva remains approachable. His ascetic form, his wild locks, his ash-smeared body, all speak of a god who exists not in palaces but in caves, not among the elite but with the commoner. He accepts all, from the devoted ascetic to the questioning wanderer. His symbolism in the Ganga story reminds us that divinity is not distant, it is present, accessible, and deeply connected to the flow of life. Shiva's story in this context doesn't end with Ganga's descent, it continues with every ripple of her waters, with every life she touches. He remains there, silently present, a guardian, a guide, a symbol of all that sustains and balances. And as her waters flow endlessly, so does his lesson, one of grace, of strength, and of the profound beauty in embracing both chaos and calm. The mountain winds carried a song older than time, weaving through the matted locks of Shiva and cascading into the flowing form of Ganga. They were not just two divine entities, they were bound by a connection that defied simple words. Their story was one of power and grace, of chaos and control, of destruction and creation. Together, they embodied a truth that resonated through the heavens and the earth, a dance of forces that shaped life itself. Ganga's descent into Shiva's locks was not just an act of necessity, it was a moment charged with meaning. She, the proud and untamed river goddess, had thundered with a fury born of her celestial origins. Her defiance was as mighty as her waters, challenging the very earth she was meant to nourish. But when Shiva stepped into her path, her torrents met an unyielding calm. He did not command her, he welcomed her, absorbing her strength without losing his own. Their bond was forged in this act, a relationship as fluid and dynamic as the waters of Ganga herself. She was the life-giver, the nurturer, her essence flowing through civilizations, sustaining and cleansing. He was the stillness, the anchor, the force that could contain her unbridled energy without diminishing it. Together, they represented the balance that held the universe together, the interplay of motion and stillness, the meeting of the wild and the wise. In myth and devotion, this relationship has inspired countless hearts. It is said that Ganga chose Shiva as her resting place not out of obligation but out of reverence. He was the only being capable of understanding her essence. Where others might have feared her force, Shiva saw her beauty. He did not seek to control her but to guide her, ensuring that her boundless power served a purpose greater than herself. For devotees, this union symbolizes the sacred interplay between nature and the divine. Shiva, the ascetic, unadorned by material desires, represents the spiritual pursuit of liberation. Ganga, flowing and ever-moving, embodies life's impermanence and its eternal cycles. Together, they teach that the spiritual and the material are not at odds, but are parts of a greater whole. Just as Shiva holds Ganga in his locks, spirituality must ground and guide the currents of life. But their relationship is not one of dominance or submission. It is one of mutual respect and harmony. Ganga's initial reluctance to descend to earth mirrors her resistance to being bound, to losing her celestial freedom. Yet, in Shiva, she finds not a captor but a partner. His presence transforms her descent into an act of grace, allowing her to flow freely while remaining anchored in purpose. It is a partnership that celebrates individuality even within union, a lesson that echoes far beyond mythology. Their story also carries a deeply emotional resonance. Ganga's pride and defiance are not flaws, but reflections of her strength and independence. Shiva's calm and acceptance are not signs of weakness, but of unparalleled power. Together, they show that relationships, divine or human, thrive not in control, but in understanding. Their bond reminds us that strength lies not in overpowering, but in uplifting, in recognizing and nurturing the unique qualities of another. In the hearts of those who revere them, Shiva and Ganga are not just deities, but ideals. The river goddess flowing through his matted locks becomes a metaphor for the divine presence in life's every movement. Her waters purify, cleanse, and sustain, while his stillness reminds us to remain grounded amidst life's currents. Their union speaks of coexistence, of finding peace in chaos, and of embracing life in all its forms. And yet, their story doesn't end here. It flows onward, much like Ganga herself, touching lives and inspiring hearts. The image of Shiva, meditating with Ganga flowing through his locks, is a reminder of the eternal dance of existence, the meeting of the infinite and the finite, the divine and the earthly. Their bond is a story that never truly ends, for as long as Ganga flows and Shiva's presence is felt, their tale will live on, rippling through the hearts of all who seek to understand the sacred balance of life. The silence of the Himalayan peaks was absolute, broken only by the whisper of the wind and the distant hum of unseen life. Amidst this stillness sat Shiva, the Mahayogi, his form etched against the vastness of the cosmos. His eyes were closed, not in escape but in profound awareness. Every breath he took resonated with the rhythm of the universe, his detachment a force that both drew and awed the world around him. Shiva's detachment was not indifference. It was the ultimate freedom, a release from the binds of desire and fear. In his stillness, he carried the weight of existence, not as a burden, but as a part of his being. He was the refuge of those who sought liberation, the anchor for those adrift in the storms of life. His silence was a dialogue, speaking to the soul in ways words could never capture. His matted locks, heavy with the flowing Ganga, were more than a physical image, they were a symbol of his role as the bridge between heaven and earth. Shiva did not hoard power for himself, he absorbed it, transformed it, and let it flow to where it was needed most. The descent of Ganga was not just her story, it was his as well. It was his resolve that tempered her torrents, his stillness that shaped her chaos into life-giving streams. For Shiva, being a conduit was not a role chosen out of obligation but out of profound compassion. He understood the struggles of human existence, the ceaseless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that bound mortals to their sorrows. His detachment allowed him to see beyond these cycles, offering salvation not as a gift but as a possibility, one that required courage and self-awareness from those who sought it. The fire in his third eye spoke of destruction, but it was not the kind born of anger or vengeance. It was the fire of transformation, consuming illusion and falsehood, making way for truth. When Shiva opened that eye, he did not destroy, he purified, allowing the essence of life to emerge untainted. It was this fire that burned within his meditative stillness, a quiet yet relentless force that promised renewal. Shiva's detachment was not an escape from life, but an embrace of its essence. He did not shun the world, he carried it within himself, becoming the cosmic dancer whose every movement spoke of creation and dissolution, of beginnings and endings. The ashes smeared on his body were a reminder of life's impermanence, a testament to the cycle of decay and rebirth that he watched over without attachment or sorrow. In his role as the divine yogi, Shiva showed that salvation was not an act of divine intervention but a journey within. He did not offer answers, he held space for seekers to find their own. His presence was not a path to escape the world but to understand and transcend it. For those who came to him burdened with the weight of existence, his gaze was a mirror, reflecting their true selves and the infinite possibilities of their being. And yet, Shiva was no distant figure. He was as close as the breath, as vast as the sky, his essence permeating every corner of existence. In his detachment, he became the most intimate, his compassion extending to all without discrimination. He did not judge, he accepted, offering a refuge to those who were lost and a challenge to those who sought to awaken. As Ganga flowed from his locks, nurturing the earth and purifying the souls it touched, it carried with it the essence of Shiva's detachment and grace. She became a reminder of his role as the divine yogi, her waters whispering of liberation and the eternal dance of existence. Her flow mirrored his stillness, her life-giving currents a testament to his boundless compassion. The story of Shiva and Ganga was far from over, for their presence lingered in every stream, every prayer, and every heart that longed for transcendence. The winds howled through the snow-laden peaks of the Himalayas, their whispers carrying tales older than time. In the heart of this sacred expanse, Shiva sat in eternal stillness, his matted locks flowing like rivers of night, tangling with the cosmos itself. Within those locks, the essence of life moved with purpose, as if the entire universe had chosen them as its resting place. From this celestial canopy flowed Ganga, her descent not merely a river's journey but the manifestation of something far greater, an eternal connection between heaven, earth, and humanity. Ganga's flow from Shiva's locks was not just a sight to behold, it was a profound symbol, a story written in water, woven into the very fabric of existence. To those who looked beyond the surface, each strand of his hair told a tale of strength, humility, and balance. The river's fall, gentle yet commanding, mirrored the controlled chaos of life, where grace and ferocity coexisted in perfect harmony. Shiva's locks were no ordinary tresses. They represented the untamed, the raw force of nature that held both destruction and creation in its grasp. When Ganga surged toward the earth with unmatched might, it was these locks that softened her wrath, transforming her torrential descent into a life-giving flow. It was not a matter of dominance but of profound understanding. Shiva knew her power, respected it, and embraced it with open arms, offering his locks as a sanctuary where chaos could find rhythm. For those who worshipped him, the image of Ganga streaming through his locks was more than a depiction of divine intervention, it was a promise. It spoke of a God who did not stand apart from the world but intertwined himself with its struggles and beauty. Shiva's matted locks were the chaos of existence, uncombed and unrefined, yet within that chaos lay order, a reminder that even the wildest currents could find direction and purpose. Each knot and curl in his hair held meanings layered with complexity and simplicity. The hair symbolized asceticism, the renunciation of worldly ties, and the embracing of universal truths. Yet, through these very locks, he bore the weight of Ganga, allowing her to descend and nurture the world. It was a paradox that Shiva embodied effortlessly, detachment paired with the deepest compassion, stillness interwoven with movement, silence harmonized with the song of life. The myths spoke of how the river would have destroyed the earth had she not first been tamed by Shiva's locks. But was it truly taming, or was it an act of balance? Shiva did not hold Ganga captive, he gave her a form through which she could serve her purpose without causing harm. It was a relationship of trust, where her flow and his stillness danced together, creating a rhythm that brought life to barren lands and hope to weary souls. The cascading Ganga, flowing from his locks, became a bridge between the spiritual and the earthly. To the seekers who gazed at the image, it whispered of surrender, not as weakness, but as strength. Shiva's locks taught that surrendering to the flow of life could transform chaos into beauty, despair into renewal. They carried the wisdom of centuries, a silent hymn to the harmony that could arise when power met humility, when wildness found a guiding hand. And yet, there was more. His locks, tangled and vast, symbolized the interconnectedness of all things. Just as Ganga found her way through their labyrinthine paths, so too did human lives wind through the complexities of existence, finding their course amidst challenges and detours. The journey was not about reaching an end, but embracing the flow, trusting that even amidst the twists and turns, there was meaning. The waters of Ganga, blessed by Shiva's locks, were said to purify not only the body but the soul. This purification was not about erasing one's flaws, but about accepting them, about letting the currents wash over the burdens of guilt and fear, leaving behind a heart open to love and forgiveness. It was Shiva's gift to humanity, given not from a place of superiority but from a deep empathy for the struggles of life. As Ganga flowed on, she carried with her the essence of those locks, a reminder of the balance between might and grace, the union of chaos and calm. She became the lifeline of civilizations, the muse of poets, the solace of saints. And yet, her origins in Shiva's locks remained a profound mystery, a tale whispered in prayers and echoed in the heartbeats of those who felt her presence. The myth was not merely a story but a reflection of life's greatest truths. In Shiva's locks, humanity found the wisdom to face its own torrents, the courage to channel its storms, and the grace to flow onward, carrying with it the possibility of renewal and hope. The air buzzed with devotion, a rhythm beating in countless hearts, the chant of Har Har Mahadev rising like a tidal wave. Under the silver glow of the moon, temples shimmered with the flicker of oil lamps, and the sacred Ganga flowed nearby, her waters reflecting the light of 1,000 prayers. This was no ordinary night. It was a communion of spirit and celebration, where the divine and the human became one. In the shadow of towering shrines and the gentle lapping of holy waters, rituals unfolded with timeless grace. Devotees knelt by the riverbank, cupping their hands to lift the cool, sacred water to their lips, their hearts whispering silent pleas for forgiveness, strength, and renewal. The Ganga, the river goddess, cradled their hopes and fears, her flow an unbroken link to the divine. With every offering, every drop poured back into her depths, an unspoken connection strengthened, a promise of protection, purification, and peace. Mahashivratri, the great night of Shiva, carried an intensity that words could scarcely capture. Temples echoed with the deep hum of sacred chants, the sound resonating like the pulse of the universe itself. Pilgrims clad in white or saffron carried their devotion like a flame, unwavering and bright. In their hands, they brought offerings of bay leaves, flowers, and milk, placing them tenderly on the lingam, Shiva's symbol of creation and dissolution. Through the night, the air felt alive, charged with an energy that seemed to touch the stars. Fasting devotees meditated in silence, their minds drawn inward to the essence of Shiva's cosmic stillness. Around them, others danced in joyous abandon, their movements a prayer of their own, a celebration of the boundless power and compassion of their beloved Mahadev. Then came Ganga Dasara, a festival that honored the river's sacred descent to the earth. The riverbanks transformed into sanctuaries of devotion, bustling with families, ascetics, and seekers. Clay lamps floated upon the waters, their tiny flames bobbing like stars on the surface. Children laughed, elders prayed, and the Ganga embraced them all without distinction. It was a day when the river's eternal flow seemed to sing with the voices of millions, her current carrying away the weight of sins and sorrows. Every drop of water poured over a Shiva lingam was a story, every lamp set adrift a wish. The devotees believed that in these simple acts lay profound truths, acknowledgement of life's transience, faith in the divine order, and gratitude for the gift of existence. The Ganga, intertwined with Shiva, became more than a river. She became a lifeline, a living goddess whose blessings touched the mundane and the mystical alike. During the monsoon festival of Tej, women adorned in vibrant reds and greens gathered by the Ganga, their laughter mingling with the rush of the river. They prayed for their families, their bonds strengthened by the enduring example of divine relationships. Shiva and Ganga's union spoke of balance, love, and respect, qualities that these women sought to weave into their own lives. The chants and rituals were not just for the gods, they were for the people, too, a mirror to reflect their deepest desires and fears, their dreams and regrets. Through the rhythms of festivals and the timeless pull of rituals, they found a way to anchor themselves, to connect with something far greater than their fleeting moments on earth. As the rituals unfolded, the Ganga and Shiva stood as silent witnesses, their essence woven into the hearts of all who sought their grace. And yet, beneath the grandeur of the festivals, there was always an undercurrent of simplicity, an offering of love, a whispered prayer, a silent hope that the divine was listening. In the quiet solitude of an ancient temple, a sculptor's chisel once kissed stone with deliberate precision. From the unyielding granite emerged a vision, the river goddess Ganga poised gracefully on a makara, the mythical sea creature. Her flowing robes seemed alive, and her serene face exuded both compassion and majesty. Carved with devotion and skill, this image would not just decorate but inspire, capturing a story that rippled through generations like her sacred waters. The Ganges had always been more than a river. She was a muse, a symbol, and a lifeline, her essence immortalized in countless forms. In the timeless verses of the Rigveda, her name was a hymn, her flow a prayer. The poets spoke of her as pure and divine, her waters cleansing not only the body but the soul. The Ganga flowed through their words with the same vigor that she coursed through the plains, eternal and unrelenting. In temples and shrines, her presence was unmistakable. Murals told her story in vibrant hues, her descent from heaven, Shiva's embrace of her torrent, and her journey across the land. Each brushstroke seemed to echo the chants of devotees, a silent dialogue between the sacred and the seeker. The frescoes showed her cradled in Shiva's matted locks, a testament to his strength and her grace. Around her swirled celestial beings and mortal figures, their faces uplifted in awe and devotion. Epics like the Mahabharata and Ramayana held her within their pages, her waters flowing through their grand tales. In the Mahabharata, the Ganga was a mother, her sorrow and sacrifice woven into the fabric of destiny. Her love for her children and her resolve to fulfill her divine purpose painted her as more than a deity. She was a nurturer and protector, embodying the eternal bond between the divine and the earthly. Artists across centuries were drawn to her story, their hands creating masterpieces that transcended time. Miniature paintings depicted her journey in delicate detail, her waters painted in shades of blue and silver, shimmering with divine light. In every art form, she was not merely a subject but a presence, her essence captured in ways that words could never fully articulate. Literature, too, sang her praises with fervor. In Kalidasa's Meghaduta, the Ganga became a silent observer, her waters reflecting the longing of separated lovers. In Tulsidasa's Ramcharitmanas, she was a thread of sanctity, her flow intertwining with the epic's devotion. The poets painted her not just as a river but as a living force, one that listened, comforted, and absolved. The Ganges flowed through stone, canvas, and verse, but her story was also alive in the everyday lives of people. Folk songs carried her name across villages and fields, her presence felt in every word sung under the open sky. The melodies spoke of her power and her mercy, her waters a reminder of life's fragility and beauty. Even in the silent grandeur of ancient manuscripts, her image shone bright. Illuminated texts adorned with intricate designs placed her at the heart of cosmic tales, her flow linking the heavens to the earth. The Ganga was depicted as both fierce and gentle, her duality reflecting the essence of existence itself. Every piece of art, every line of poetry, and every whisper of a prayer spoke of a connection so profound that it defied comprehension. The Ganges was not just revered, she was lived, her essence flowing in the veins of those who called her their own. And as her waters touched every corner of the land, her story continued to unfold, an endless saga of faith, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between the divine and the earthly. Along the banks of the Ganges, there are temples that seem to pulse with the rhythm of time itself. Their ancient stones, worn smooth by centuries of devotion, stand tall like sentinels watching over the river's endless flow. In the stillness of these sacred sites, the air is thick with prayer, the scent of incense, and the weight of centuries of worship. These are not just places of worship, They are living monuments, each echoing with the footsteps of millions who have come seeking solace, redemption, or simply a moment of connection with the divine. In Varanasi, the heart of devotion, the Ganga Aarti unfolds each evening like a ritual that has always been. The sacred flames dance in the air, and the chants rise, their resonance filling the ancient temple walls. Here, at the Kashi Vishwanath temple, Shiva's presence is felt in every corner, his eyes watching over the city and the river, a silent protector of all who seek him. The Ganges, revered as his consort, flows by the temple, a river of life and spirituality, witnessing the devotion of countless souls. People gather, hands clasped in prayer, their faces illuminated by the flickering lights, each seeking something different but all bound by the same love for the divine. In Haridwar, the Ganges flows with the same reverence, her waters touching the earth like a mother embracing her child. The Har Ki Pauri, a sacred ghat, stands at the edge, where the Ganga's mighty waters meet the feet of Shiva's devotees. Pilgrims from every corner of India come here, standing on the steps that lead into the river, their hearts heavy with prayer, their hopes flowing with the current. The temples here, dedicated to both Ganga and Shiva, form a powerful nexus, a place where the spiritual and the earthly meet in a harmonious embrace. The Kedarnath temple, perched high in the Himalayas, carries the weight of legend and faith. Here, Shiva is both the lord of the mountains and the keeper of souls. His icy form, cold and unyielding, contrasts with the warmth of the devotion that burns in the hearts of those who undertake the arduous journey to reach him. The temple, surrounded by snow-capped peaks and the sound of distant chants, is a place where time seems to stop, where Shiva's presence is felt in the gust of wind, in the quiet snowfall, and in the silent prayers of the pilgrims. Further north, in the town of Rishikesh, the temples dedicated to Shiva overlook the river, and the peaceful surroundings offer the perfect space for meditation and prayer. It is here that many find their connection to the divine, where the sacred Ganga and the meditative silence of the mountains meet. The Ram Jula and Laxman Jula stand as symbols of faith, connecting the two banks of the river like bridges between the human and the divine. Temples here are dedicated to both Shiva and Ganga, with devotees offering flowers, lighting candles, and singing bhajans, each song carrying their prayers upstream, toward the mountains and beyond. In Uttarakhand's Badrinath, the temple sits under the gaze of snowy peaks, its walls adorned with images of both Shiva and Ganga. This place, considered one of the holiest in the land, is where the river meets the earth and where the divine presence of Shiva is said to be strongest. The temples here, built from stone and adorned with carvings, tell the story of the union between Shiva and Ganga, of a love so pure and deep that it transcends time and space. The chants of pilgrims here blend with the sound of the river, creating an eternal rhythm of faith. And then, there is the sacred town of Prayagraj, where the Ganga, Yamuna, and the mythical Sarasvati meet. The Triveni Sangam is not just a geographical place, it is a spiritual confluence, where souls are cleansed and reborn. The temples here, ancient and full of life, speak of the grandeur of Shiva's role in the cosmic dance. His presence, symbolized in the sacred lingam, radiates through the town as the Ganga flows by, carrying prayers of millions toward liberation. During the Kumbh Mela, this sacred site becomes a whirlpool of devotion, where devotees bathe in the holy waters, believing that they are washing away their sins and receiving the blessings of both Shiva and Ganga. In the town of Gangotri, the source of the Ganges, the sacred temple dedicated to Ganga holds a special significance. Situated amidst the pristine Himalayan peaks, it is said that Ganga herself, in her celestial form, chose to descend to earth from this spot. The temple, small but powerful, stands as a tribute to the river goddess and to the unbroken connection between Shiva and the Ganges. Pilgrims who make the arduous trek to this place do so with reverence in their hearts, knowing they are standing on the very spot where Ganga's journey began. As they bathe in the freezing waters, they offer their prayers to both Shiva and Ganga, their devotion and the river's blessings intertwining in a sacred moment of peace and renewal. The temples of Shiva and Ganga are not just places of stone and mortar, they are sanctuaries where the divine manifests in ways that touch the hearts of all who visit. Each temple holds a unique energy, a distinct vibration that resonates with the faithful. Some come seeking wisdom, others solace, but all find something deeper, an understanding of the eternal connection between the divine and the earthly. Whether they are bathing in the sacred rivers, chanting mantras, or simply sitting in silence, these pilgrims are bound by a thread that stretches back through time and continues to flow, like the Ganges herself, through the hearts of all who honor her. In these sacred spaces, Shiva's presence is felt not just in the temples dedicated to him, but in the very fabric of the landscape. The Ganga flows through the world like a living testament to the love between the divine and the earthly. And in every temple, whether perched high in the mountains or nestled along the riverbanks, there is a whisper, a reminder, that the connection between Shiva and Ganga is eternal, transcending both time and place, and that those who seek them with pure hearts will always find their way. The morning sun stretches across the sky, its golden rays brushing the surface of the Ganges. The water ripples gently as small boats move along, carrying people who have come from distant lands, seeking the blessings of the river that has shaped their world. From ancient times, the Ganges has been more than just a river, she has been the lifeblood of civilizations. Flowing through India like a divine thread, she has watered the land, fed the people, and nurtured entire cultures. Her waters have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the flourishing of agriculture, and the growth of bustling trade routes. Every grain of rice, every crop harvested from the fertile banks of the Ganges carries with it the imprint of her ancient flow. The river's influence on agriculture is a story written in the soil. As the Ganges swells each year, it deposits rich, dark silt along her banks, an offering of nutrients that has transformed the land into a paradise for farmers. The fields stretch out, golden with ripened crops, as the farmers, with faces weathered by the sun, bend over their work, tending to the fruits of the river's generosity. These lands, nourished by the Ganges, have supported civilizations for millennia. Rice, wheat, and sugarcane grow abundantly in the fertile plains, sustaining populations that have thrived along the river's path. The rhythm of sowing and reaping is intertwined with the river's flow, as seasons change, and the crops rise and fall in harmony with the Ganga's moods. The river, in her ever-giving spirit, has made it possible for these communities to survive, grow, and prosper. But the Ganges offers more than just sustenance for the body, she feeds the soul of the nation. She is the thread that binds entire communities together. Along her banks, cities and towns have flourished, each one built on the foundation of the river's generosity. Settlements have sprung up, their walls echoing with the lives of those who have called this land home for centuries. Villages, towns, and cities like Varanasi, Haridwar, and Kanpur have thrived along the river, drawing people from all walks of life. The promise of the Ganges has drawn rulers, traders, pilgrims, and wanderers alike, creating bustling hubs of commerce, culture, and religion. As boats glide across the river, carrying goods from one town to another, they serve as a reminder of how the Ganges has connected people across time and space, offering them not just a means of transport but a path to prosperity. Trade along the Ganges flourished as merchant caravans lined her banks, and markets brimming with goods from all corners of India and beyond came to life. Goods such as spices, textiles, and precious metals passed through the hands of traders, each item a testament to the economic pulse of the river's vast influence. The river became the artery through which wealth flowed, enabling settlements to thrive in the fertile plains that were bathed by her waters. From the north, traders journeyed toward the heart of India, carrying silk and spices. To the south, the Ganges connected the rich lands of Bengal to the rest of the world. The river became more than just a passage for goods, it became a highway to connection, a vital link between people, cultures, and nations. Yet, it is not just the tangible benefits of the Ganges that are remembered, it is the way she has shaped the spiritual heart of India. She flows through the very essence of its culture, carving not just the land, but the identity of its people. The river is the inspiration for poets, painters, and philosophers. The scent of the river's waters, the sound of its flow, and the sight of the sun rising over its surface are all woven into the fabric of the Indian soul. People have gathered on its banks for centuries, offering prayers, performing rituals, and seeking renewal. The river is sacred, and her role in Indian civilization extends beyond the material to the spiritual. She is the cleanser of sins, the nurturer of faith, and the bridge between the mortal and the divine. To touch her waters is to feel the pulse of life itself, to become part of a greater whole. It is on the banks of the Ganges that civilizations have risen, but it is also here that they have paused, reflected, and found meaning in the ever-flowing waters. The river has witnessed the birth of great ideas and the unraveling of mysteries, her surface a mirror to the thoughts and dreams of those who have stood beside her. From the great sages who meditated in her embrace to the kings who built temples in her honor, the Ganges has shaped the minds and hearts of those who have walked her shores. In the cities that grew up around her, the Ganges became more than a river. She became the central figure in a narrative of survival, strength, and beauty. Her waters are a living testament to the resilience of life itself. She has seen civilizations come and go, yet she endures, providing life to the land and people who worship her. The stories told along her banks are stories of growth, of harvest, of sacrifice, and of hope. The river has watched over those who have built their lives along her shores, witnessing their joys and sorrows, their victories and losses. And yet, she remains unchanged, a constant presence in a world that shifts and changes. The Ganges also carries the promise of connection. Along her length, from the towering peaks of the Himalayas to the fertile plains of Bengal, there is a shared sense of identity. The river is a silent thread that weaves together communities, a common bond that transcends the differences of language, culture, and history. As villages and towns grow along her banks, they share the rhythm of the river, the pulse of life that she provides. Whether it's the smell of freshly harvested crops, the sounds of markets bustling with traders, or the quiet moments of reflection along her banks, the river's influence is everywhere, shaping the very fabric of the land and its people. As the sun sets over the Ganges, casting a golden glow across the water, it is impossible not to feel the weight of the river's legacy. She is more than just a body of water. She is the lifeblood of India, the pulse that has sustained generations of people, the thread that has held civilizations together. Her role in agriculture, trade, and settlements is not just a matter of history, it is a story that continues to unfold, a story that will live on as long as the river flows. And as long as the Ganges runs through the land, so too will the heartbeat of a nation that has flourished along her banks. The wind whispers over the Himalayas, carrying with it the scent of earth and snow, the promise of life, and the mystery of ancient tales. The river Ganga, her waters flowing from the heavens, falls like a divine cascade from the very locks of Shiva. Her descent, not just a flow of water, but the embodiment of something sacred, something eternal. But there is more to this tale than what meets the eye. Beneath the surface of this divine story lies the intricate weave of mythology, devotion, and cosmic balance, all of which converge in the deep connection between Shiva, Ganga, and the Puranas. In the sacred texts of the Puranas, the river Ganga is not merely water. She is the symbol of purity, of renewal, of life itself. The stories told in these ancient scriptures unfold like a grand cosmic drama, with Shiva at the center, his connection with Ganga stretching beyond the earthly and into the divine. The Puranas describe the river as a goddess, one whose beauty and power are unmatched. She flows through the universe, weaving her way through the very fabric of life, bringing blessings to all who come into contact with her sacred waters. But it is through the myth of Shiva that the story of Ganga becomes even more profound. Shiva, the lord of destruction and transformation, is often depicted sitting in a meditative trance atop Mount Kailash, his form serene, his eyes closed in the stillness of deep contemplation. It is in this peaceful solitude that the river goddess first makes her appearance. In the Puranic narrative, Ganga is a heavenly river, her waters flowing from the cosmic oceans. She is no ordinary river, but a powerful force that has the ability to purify and cleanse all that she touches. Her presence is both soothing and overwhelming, capable of washing away sins, but also capable of bringing destruction if not properly contained. The story of Ganga's descent to earth is one of divine intervention, one that is both delicate and intense. The gods, knowing of Ganga's power, fear that if she descends unchecked, she would devastate the earth. It is then that Shiva, the god of yoga, the protector of life, steps in. His role is pivotal. He takes the overwhelming flood of Ganga's waters into his hands, controlling the flow with his cosmic power. In the Puranas, Shiva is depicted as the one who tames Ganga, trapping her in his hair, allowing only a gentle stream to escape. It is through this act of balance that the river is allowed to flow peacefully through the world, bringing her blessings without bringing destruction. Shiva's act of taming Ganga's power is symbolic of the deeper forces at work in the universe. Shiva, as the divine yogi, represents the perfect balance between creation and destruction, between chaos and order. His connection with Ganga is not just one of physical control, but a reflection of the cosmic harmony that he embodies. The river's descent, and Shiva's role in it, speaks to the intricate dance between destruction and renewal. Where there is destruction, there is also the possibility of rebirth. Where there is death, there is also life. The Puranas tell us that when Shiva receives Ganga's mighty flow into his locks, it is not just a physical act. It is an act of grace. Shiva, in his infinite compassion, transforms the destructive power of the river into something beneficial for all of humanity. His hair, often depicted as matted and wild, is the conduit through which Ganga flows gently to the earth. Through his wisdom and grace, Shiva takes on the weight of the universe, allowing life to continue in balance. The Puranic stories reveal the deep connection between the divine and the earthly, between the forces of nature and the human experience. In Shiva's act of receiving Ganga, there is an unspoken promise, a promise that, even in the face of overwhelming forces, there is always a way to bring peace, to find balance, and to protect life. But the myth does not stop there. Ganga, after her descent into the world, becomes more than just a river. She is a goddess, revered by all, her waters believed to cleanse the soul and bring liberation. The Puranas describe the pilgrimage to the Ganges as a sacred act, one that allows the devotee to experience the river's divine presence. People come from all corners of India, walking for days, even weeks, to reach her banks. They carry with them the hopes of salvation, the weight of their sins, and the belief that the Ganges will wash it all away. In the Puranic view, Ganga is not just a physical river, she is the divine flow of life itself. Her waters carry the promise of moksha, the ultimate liberation, freeing the soul from the cycle of birth and death. Shiva, in his connection with Ganga, represents the eternal yogi who sits above the world, watching over its balance and guiding its forces. His role is both protective and transformative. As the divine yogi, Shiva's detachment from the material world does not mean indifference to it. Rather, it is through his detachment that he is able to act as the protector, the one who ensures the preservation of life. In the Puranic texts, Shiva's relationship with Ganga symbolizes the deep bond between the sacred and the mundane. The river's descent is not just a moment in time, it is a continuous flow, a river that never ends, just as the forces of creation, destruction, and renewal continue in an endless cycle. There is a quiet strength in Shiva's role in the myth. He is not a god who seeks glory or recognition. His act of receiving Ganga is a quiet, humble one, rooted in deep wisdom and love for the world he protects. It is through this humble service that the world is sustained. The Ganges flows because of Shiva, and yet he asks for nothing in return. His devotion to the world is an offering that never ends, as constant as the flow of the river itself. Through the Puranas, the story of Shiva and Ganga becomes more than just a myth. It becomes a living, breathing testament to the power of balance, of grace, and of divine love. It is a story that touches the heart of every devotee who kneels by the river, who seeks the blessings of the gods, and who understands the deeper meaning of this divine connection. The river, the god, and the sacred text are bound together in a dance that transcends time and space, a reminder that, in the vastness of the universe, it is love and grace that ultimately bring balance to all things. The air is thick with the scent of incense, the hum of chanting voices fills the atmosphere, and the soft ripple of water echoes through the sacred banks of the Ganges. The river flows steadily, her waters carrying the stories of countless souls, each drop a memory, a moment of life lived and life lost. To those who gather by her shores, the Ganges is more than just a river, she is a lifeline, a connection between this world and the next. With every wave, every current, Ganga weaves a timeless tale of life, death, and the eternal cycle that binds them together. In the Hindu understanding, the Ganges is far more than just a physical presence. She is a symbol, a divine force that governs not just the flow of water, but the flow of existence itself. The very essence of life, death, and rebirth is encapsulated in the sacred waters of this river. To bathe in the Ganges is to wash away not only the dirt of the body but the stains of the soul. It is believed that Ganga's waters have the power to purify, to cleanse, to free one from the shackles of karma, and to help transcend the endless cycle of reincarnation. The cycle of life and death in Hinduism is intricately tied to the concept of karma, the belief that every action has consequences, and those consequences shape the course of a soul's journey. The Ganges, as a divine entity, plays a crucial role in this understanding. She is the bridge between life and death, between the earthly and the divine. Those who pass from this life to the next often seek Ganga's blessings in their final moments, hoping that her sacred waters will wash away the burdens of their past lives and lead them toward a peaceful transition. As the river flows from the highest peaks of the Himalayas, she carries the promise of renewal. Her waters are believed to have the power to cleanse the soul, to remove the effects of bad karma, and to offer a fresh start in the next life. The concept of reincarnation is central to Hindu thought. Life is not seen as a single journey but as an ongoing cycle: birth, death, and rebirth. Each life is a chance to learn, to grow, to evolve, and to move closer toward liberation, toward moksha, the ultimate freedom from the cycle of reincarnation. The Ganges, in her divine grace, offers the hope of liberation. She is the savior of the soul, the one who can carry away the weight of past sins and bad karma, making it possible for the soul to begin anew. To immerse oneself in her waters, to be touched by her sacred currents, is to be given a chance to start again, to shed the burdens of a lifetime. For many, it is believed that the moment of death by the river's edge is not an end, but a beginning, a new chapter in the soul's eternal journey. The Ganges provides the soul with the final purification before it begins again, free from the constraints of past actions. It is this divine act of cleansing, of rebirth, that ties Ganga so deeply to the Hindu understanding of karma and reincarnation. In the teachings of the Gita and the vast scriptures of the Puranas, the importance of the river is emphasized time and time again. The Ganges is not just a river that flows through the land, she is the embodiment of divine grace, the purifier of souls, the conduit through which the cycle of life and death is transcended. Her waters are not merely a physical force, they are a spiritual one, carrying with them the power to transform, to heal, and to free. At the ghats along the river, the cremation pyres burn day and night, the smoke rising toward the sky as bodies are sent back to the elements. In these sacred places, death is not feared but revered, for it is understood as an essential part of the cosmic order. The Ganges is present in every step of this process. The river is there when the body is brought to be purified, when the soul takes its final journey, and when the ashes are scattered into her waters, symbolizing the soul's release and its return to the universe. It is a profound moment, one of sorrow, yes, but also of peace, knowing that the soul has been washed clean, its karma dissolved, and its next life will begin anew. The cycle of life, death, and rebirth is not a burden but a beautiful opportunity. For many, the Ganges offers the hope that through her sacred waters, they can break free from the endless cycle of suffering and emerge into a state of bliss. The teachings of karma and reincarnation, as understood by the Hindus, are not a system of punishment but a path to liberation. Each life is a chance to work through one's karmic debts, to grow closer to the divine, to ultimately realize the true nature of the soul. And it is the Ganges, in her divine wisdom, that facilitates this process. She is the river of life, but she is also the river of death, guiding each soul as it flows between the two, offering it a chance to be reborn again and again until it finally reaches the ultimate goal of moksha. To understand the power of the Ganges is to understand the cycle of life itself. She is the river that feeds the earth, that sustains life, and that, in the end, releases the soul to its next journey. Her waters hold the wisdom of the universe, the promise of liberation, and the beauty of eternal rebirth. In the sacred rituals that surround her, in the prayers and chants that rise from her shores, one can feel the profound connection between all living things. The Ganges is not just a river that flows through the land, she is the flow of life itself. When a person's life ends, they are often brought to the Ganges with the hope that their journey through life will be completed, and their soul will be released from the cycle of rebirth. In the eyes of the devotees, this is not a moment of fear or sadness, but one of hope. For they know that the Ganges, with her divine grace, will carry their loved one's soul away to a new beginning, free from the weight of past mistakes. It is this belief that keeps the river alive in the hearts of millions, and it is why the Ganges is revered as the ultimate purifier, the giver of life and death, and the eternal keeper of souls. Through every wave and every ripple, the Ganges whispers the truth of life's eternal cycle. She carries with her the wisdom of the universe, the power to heal, and the blessing of rebirth. And as the river continues her journey from the mountains to the sea, she carries the hopes and prayers of all who seek her blessing, who long for their own soul to be freed from the chains of karma and reincarnation. The cycle may never end, but the Ganges will always be there, waiting to guide the soul to its next beginning. At the foot of Mount Kailash, a realm untouched by time, Shiva sits in perfect stillness. His eyes, filled with endless wisdom, gaze beyond the boundaries of the world, into the vastness of all that is and all that will ever be. His third eye, burning with unrelenting truth, holds the power to destroy illusions and bring clarity to the darkest corners of existence. He is both the end and the beginning, the force that tears down and the force that builds anew. In his stillness lies the pulse of the universe, a reminder that destruction is not an end, but a step toward freedom. Shiva is often called the destroyer. His presence invokes fear, awe, and reverence, for destruction, in his hands, is a sacred act. He is not a mere force of annihilation, but one of transformation. In every cosmic cycle, Shiva's role is to bring an end to what no longer serves, to clear the path for new creation, for the rebirth of the soul, and the renewal of the universe. The destruction that he brings is not an act of wrath, but of compassion. He rips away the old, the stagnant, the false, so that something pure and true can emerge from the ashes. When Shiva's dance of destruction begins, it is not a chaotic frenzy, but a deliberate and graceful movement, as if the very fabric of reality is being rewritten. With each step, he removes the veil of ignorance, each movement shedding the weight of the past. His cosmic dance, the Tandava, is a powerful reminder that all things must come to an end. Yet, within that end lies the potential for rebirth. It is through destruction that creation can be born again, pure and untainted. Just as a forest fire clears the ground for new life, Shiva's destructive force creates space for new beginnings, for the cycle of life to continue. Yet, as much as Shiva is the destroyer, he is also the liberator. His role as liberator is one that brings peace, clarity, and release from the chains of suffering. By destroying the false, he reveals the truth. By tearing down the illusions that bind us, he frees us to discover our truest nature, to return to a state of purity. His presence brings a sense of release, a reminder that the soul is not bound by time, by the physical body, or by the limitations of earthly existence. In the cosmic order, it is through Shiva's actions that souls are freed from the cycle of samsara, the endless wheel of birth and rebirth. Through his compassionate destruction, the soul sheds its attachments, its desires, its karma, and is liberated to reunite with the divine. Shiva's destruction is not a violent act, it is a compassionate one. It is the ultimate gift to the soul, to break free from the shackles of past actions and rise into a state of eternal peace. The paradox of Shiva's nature is what makes him so captivating. He is both fierce and gentle, both the destroyer and the liberator. His actions, though seemingly harsh, are driven by a deep understanding of the nature of existence. He knows that in order for the soul to grow, to evolve, to transcend, it must be freed from the chains of its past. This is why he stands, serene and unwavering, amid the destruction he causes, for he understands that in the destruction lies the liberation of the soul. Consider the moment when Ganga, the river goddess, descends from the heavens. Shiva receives her into his matted hair, allowing her torrents to fall gently to the earth, instead of allowing her to overwhelm and destroy the world. His compassion in this act is palpable. He could have stopped the river, or he could have allowed her to wreak havoc upon the earth, but instead, he takes her into himself, ensuring that she does not destroy what must not be destroyed. In this act, Shiva demonstrates that destruction is always done with purpose. Even when the forces of nature threaten to overwhelm, Shiva's actions are deliberate, thoughtful, and in service to the greater good. But there is another aspect of Shiva's role as a liberator that reaches into the hearts of his devotees. His liberation extends beyond the cosmic. It reaches into the lives of those who seek his grace. The stories of the many who have turned to Shiva in their darkest moments are countless. Whether through prayer, devotion, or meditation, those who seek him find that through his destruction, they too are freed from suffering, from fear, from confusion. When the soul is weighed down with the burdens of life, Shiva's grace is the release, the exhale that allows one to breathe again. The beauty of Shiva's actions is that they are never self-serving. He destroys and liberates for the sake of the world, for the sake of the souls trapped in the cycle of birth and death. His compassion flows not only to those who seek him, but to the universe as a whole. In every destruction, he is liberating the world from itself. In every ending, he is creating space for new beginnings, for new possibilities, for new life. And in every liberation, he is giving the ultimate gift to the soul, freedom. To witness Shiva's actions is to understand the deep philosophy that underpins all existence. His role as the destroyer and liberator teaches us that endings are not to be feared, but embraced. They are not the end of a story, but a part of a larger, ever-moving cycle. The destruction he brings clears the way for something new, something better, something more aligned with the truth of the universe. And in this process, the soul finds liberation, not from the world, but through it. Shiva's actions remind us that life is not about holding on to what we know, but about releasing what no longer serves us. It is about letting go of the old to make space for the new. His destruction is a purification, a chance to rid ourselves of the falsehoods that bind us. And his liberation is the freedom that comes with understanding that all things, both good and bad, are temporary, fleeting, and part of a larger, eternal cycle. In his dance of destruction and liberation, Shiva shows us the way to transcend the limitations of the material world and step into the boundless, infinite truth of existence. The river winds through the land, its waters moving steadily, flowing, never pausing. It cuts through mountains, passes through plains, and whispers stories of the ages. To see the Ganges is to witness time itself, an endless cycle of motion, a pulse that carries all within it. The river does not stop for anyone. It is a mirror of life, in all its beauty and in all its hardship. It carries with it everything, joy, sorrow, love, pain, flowing ceaselessly forward, yet always returning to the same place. This flow, the movement of the river, is a powerful metaphor for the journey of the soul. In the Ganges, we see the flow of consciousness, that unbroken, unyielding stream of awareness that shapes every thought, every feeling, every action. Just as the river's waters collect the rain, the stream of consciousness gathers the experiences of life, flowing forward, washing over the shores of the mind. But it never forgets where it has come from. It is always moving, shaping itself, sometimes calm, sometimes raging, but always moving. The Ganges, with its endless current, represents the flow of thoughts and experiences that shape us. Each wave, each ripple in its water carries memories, aspirations, regrets, and dreams. Just as we stand at the banks of the river and watch it move, so too do we watch our own minds, thoughts that come and go, some fleeting, some staying with us longer, but all part of the same eternal flow. It is the river of consciousness, always shifting, never stagnant, carrying us with it whether we are ready or not. The flow of the Ganges mirrors the movement of life itself. Life is like the river, there are twists and turns, moments of stillness, and moments of turbulence. The river's journey is not smooth, nor is it easy. It faces obstacles, sometimes flowing over rocks, sometimes crashing into banks, sometimes silently flowing through deep valleys. But it does not stop. It never turns back. It moves forward. And in this, it shows us the way we must live. We must move forward. We must embrace the flow of life, even when we are unsure, even when we are faced with challenges. Like the river, we are meant to keep going. The river, with its timeless rhythm, is also a symbol of the mind, constantly in motion, constantly shifting. It is easy to get lost in the current, to feel overwhelmed by the tide of thoughts, to be swept away by worries or desires. But just as the Ganges finds its way through the land, so too can our consciousness find its way through the chaos. It is a matter of surrender, of trusting the flow, of allowing ourselves to be carried. In this surrender, we can find peace, just as the river, though it encounters countless obstacles, still flows toward its destination. The Ganges is not just a river, it is a living symbol. It holds the memories of those who have come before us, who have stood by its banks and felt the rush of its waters cleanse them. It is the embodiment of purification, of washing away the past to make way for the future. Every drop in the river is connected to the whole, just as every thought in the mind is connected to the stream of consciousness. And just as the Ganges nurtures life, offering its water to all who come to it, so too does consciousness nourish the soul, offering us insights, growth, and renewal. There is something sacred about the flow of the river, something deeply comforting in knowing that it is always there. The river doesn't judge. It doesn't discriminate. It simply flows, accepting all who come to it. And so does consciousness. It accepts every thought, every feeling, every moment, without hesitation, without bias. It is the ultimate act of compassion. It does not stop to analyze, to hold on to any one thought, any one moment. It moves with grace and ease, giving each thought its time to exist, only to let it go when it has run its course. But there is something else about the river, something powerful in its depths. Beneath the surface, the Ganges carries untold stories, untold histories, buried in its waters. It is the same with consciousness. Beneath the surface of our everyday thoughts, beneath the noise and the chatter, there lies a deep well of wisdom, of truth, of clarity. To tap into that deeper current is to access the truth of who we are, the wisdom that guides us, the connection to the divine. It is in this depth that the Ganges, like consciousness, offers us a glimpse of something far greater than ourselves. As the river carves its path, it shapes the land. It changes everything in its path, sometimes gently, sometimes with great force. It reminds us that even in the stillness of a moment, even in the quiet flow of thought, there is power. The river's flow shapes the world around it, just as our consciousness shapes our reality. Every thought, every belief, every action sends ripples out into the world. The energy we carry within us influences everything we touch. And so, the flow of the Ganges teaches us the importance of our own flow, the importance of how we choose to move through life, how we choose to interact with the world. The Ganges flows not only through the land, but through the hearts of millions. It is the river of devotion, the river of surrender. Its waters are not just a source of life, but a source of connection to something higher. To bathe in the river is to surrender to the flow of life, to allow oneself to be cleansed of the past and to embrace the future with open arms. And in this surrender, there is peace. So, too, the flow of consciousness can lead us to peace. It is not the thoughts themselves that cause turmoil, but our attachment to them. The river shows us that there is beauty in surrender, that there is power in letting go, and simply being carried. The current of the river is constant, but it is only when we stop fighting it, when we stop trying to control it, that we can truly feel its power. And in that surrender, we find freedom. We find the peace that lies in the present moment, the clarity that arises when we let go of the past, and the future unfolds before us like the river, wide and open. The river flows, and in its flow, we find the truth of who we are. It carries us through life, through joy, through sorrow, through growth and change, offering us a path forward, no matter the obstacles, no matter the storms. And just as the Ganges will never stop flowing, neither will consciousness ever cease to move, to grow, to evolve. In its flow, we are connected to something eternal, something unchanging. And in that connection, we find our true self. A soft chant rises in the air, mingling with the rhythm of drums and the gentle sound of temple bells. Devotees, their hands clasped in prayer, stand with eyes closed, their hearts open, as if their very souls are being carried by the melodies of devotion. There is a kind of magic in the air, an invisible force that binds the hearts of all who stand together in worship. This is the power of bhakti, the devotion that flows from the depths of the heart, unspoken but deeply felt, like the river Ganga that flows through the hearts of those who revere it. In the flickering glow of an oil lamp, as the fragrance of incense fills the air, there is an undeniable connection between Shiva, Ganga, and the worshippers who offer their hearts in silent surrender. The devotion to Shiva, the eternal yogi, is not born of fear or obligation. It is born of love. The love of a child for a parent, the love of a devotee for the divine. It is a pure, untainted love that asks for nothing in return, a love that sees beyond the form, beyond the rituals, and reaches the very core of the divine. Shiva, with his ash-covered body, his third eye open, and his serpent coiled around his neck, stands not as a distant god but as a companion, a guide, a friend who walks beside the devotee, teaching them through silence, through presence, through a glance. The Ganga, too, is not just a river, it is a living goddess, a sacred mother who nurtures and purifies those who seek her blessings. When one dips their hands into her holy waters, it is not just the body that is cleansed, but the soul. The river's flow is the very embodiment of devotion, a flow that carries with it the prayers of millions, the hopes of the heart, and the longing for connection with something greater than the self. For the devotee, the river becomes a pathway to the divine, an eternal source of grace and mercy, a means of union with the sacred. In the heart of India, temples are alive with devotion. Every stone, every carving, every offering is a testimony to the love that binds the worshippers to Shiva and Ganga. People travel from across the world to stand in the shadow of the great temples, to feel the weight of centuries of devotion in the air, to place their hands on the sacred stones and ask for blessings, guidance, or forgiveness. The rituals are simple yet profound, as if each gesture, each bow, each prayer, each offering brings the devotee closer to the divine. Bhakti is not just a tradition, it is a living force that transforms the heart. In every prayer, in every act of devotion, there is the deep realization that the self is not separate from the divine. The boundaries between the individual and the God dissolve, and in that moment, there is only love, pure and unwavering. To the devotee, Shiva is not a distant figure in the sky, but a presence felt within the heart. The heart beats in time with the cosmic rhythm, and in that beat, the devotee knows that they are one with everything. The love they offer is not a mere exchange, but a flow. Just as the Ganga flows without asking for anything in return, the love of the devotee flows endlessly, touching the divine with every breath. The temples dedicated to Shiva and Ganga become the meeting place between the human and the divine. In their sacred spaces, the air is thick with reverence, with the collective longing of generations past and present. The devotee's prayer is no longer their own, it is the prayer of the earth, the sky, the stars, the river. It is the cry of the soul to return to the source. The rituals, though ancient, feel as fresh as the first time they were performed, as if the river of devotion continues to run through the hearts of those who come to offer their love. There is an undeniable joy in devotion, a joy that transcends the struggles of life. It is in the quiet moments of prayer, in the rhythmic chanting of mantras, in the soft whisper of the river's waters against the banks, that the devotee feels closest to the divine. For many, this devotion is the source of their strength, their peace, and their hope. It is the foundation of their lives, the thread that ties together their days, their joys, their pains. It is the river they return to, the love they turn to when the world feels too harsh or too uncertain. It is in this devotion that they find their true selves, where they experience the divine not as something outside them, but as something that resides within them. Bhakti to Shiva is an act of surrender, an act of devotion so pure that it leaves no room for the ego. It is a complete giving of oneself, without expectation, without condition. Shiva, the destroyer of illusion, does not demand perfection from his devotees, he only asks for their hearts, for their love, for their truth. In the simplicity of devotion, the devotee finds liberation. Through love, the illusion of separation fades, and in that fading, there is only unity. The devotion to Shiva and Ganga is not a burden, but a freeing of the spirit, an opening of the heart to the infinite. And so, the river flows, and so does the devotion of the people. Through centuries, through countless lives, through all the trials of existence, this love remains constant. It is in the water of the Ganga, in the presence of Shiva, that the devotee feels not alone, not forgotten. It is a love that transcends time and space, a love that remains steadfast even when the world around them changes. Bhakti is the eternal flame that burns in the hearts of those who have known what it is to love without measure, to surrender without fear. As the evening falls, and the last rays of the sun disappear behind the mountains, the soft glow of the lamps flickers along the banks of the river. The chants of the devotees rise once more, blending with the sound of the water, and for a moment, there is nothing but love, devotion, and the eternal flow of the river, carrying all who come to it. There is a moment when the world seems to pause, when the sun touches the horizon and the river, ever flowing, reflects the soft orange glow. It is a moment that feels timeless. Beneath the surface of the water, the rhythm of the earth pulses, steady, constant, and undisturbed. People walk along its banks, their feet brushing the soil that has soaked in the river's blessings for centuries. For them, the river is not just water, it is life, a sacred gift that demands respect and care. In ancient times, the rivers were revered not just for their beauty or the wealth they brought, but for the essential role they played in sustaining life. The Ganges, for example, was not merely a body of water, it was considered a goddess, a giver of life. Her waters nourished the land, gave farmers the means to feed entire civilizations, and cleaned the soul as much as the body. People bathed in her, not just to cleanse themselves physically, but spiritually, too. It was an act of reverence, a recognition that the river held the power to sustain and to heal. But as time passed, this deep respect for the rivers began to fade. The Ganges, once the lifeblood of India, became burdened with the weight of pollution and neglect. The reverence that once accompanied each drop of water had begun to wear thin, replaced by exploitation and disregard. Yet, beneath the layer of waste, the river still flowed, her spirit unbroken, waiting for the return of those who would cherish her once more. The story of rivers is not just a story of water, it is a story of life itself. Ancient cultures knew that the balance of the earth, the health of the land, and the well-being of humanity were all tied to the rivers. They were the arteries through which the pulse of the earth beat. When a river is clean, so too is the land it nourishes. When a river is cherished, so too are the people who depend on it. It is a connection that transcends mere function, it is a sacred bond. Today, this bond is more critical than ever. As the rivers around the world continue to suffer from the effects of industrialization, deforestation, and pollution, the question arises, can we once again look at the rivers with the same reverence our ancestors did? Can we return to a place where we understand the river is not something to be used, but something to be cared for, something that sustains us in ways we cannot always see? The ancient respect for rivers wasn't just about their immediate usefulness, it was about a recognition of their role in the larger cycle of life. The rivers, with their endless flow, are a metaphor for the interconnectedness of all things. When one part of this system suffers, the whole system feels the pain. It was not enough for the people of old to simply take from the river, they knew that their actions had consequences, and they treated the river with the same care and gratitude that one would show a parent. This same respect is needed today. As the world faces the realities of climate change, pollution, and habitat destruction, the importance of rivers has never been more apparent. They are not just bodies of water, they are lifelines. The destruction of rivers means the destruction of entire ecosystems, of the plants, animals, and human lives that depend on them. It means the loss of the very essence of life itself. But the beauty of the ancient approach is that it does not require perfection. It asks only for respect, a simple acknowledgement that the rivers, like all living things, deserve to be treated with care. This is not a call for grand gestures, but for small acts, repeated daily. It is a call to see the river for what it truly is, a sacred being, a mother, a provider. It is a call to clean up the waters we have polluted, to restore the forests we have chopped down, and to return to the practices that once allowed us to live in harmony with nature. In the quiet moments by the river, when the noise of the world fades away and the only sound is the gentle lapping of the water against the shore, there is a feeling of peace. It is a peace that comes from the knowledge that the earth will always provide, as long as we remember to treat it with respect. The rivers are not just a resource, they are a reflection of the balance between humanity and nature. When we harm the river, we harm ourselves. But when we protect it, we protect the very foundation of life. As people gather by the river, whether for worship or simply for solace, there is a quiet reminder of the deep connection we share with the earth. The river does not judge, it does not hold grudges. It simply flows, endlessly, offering life to all who seek it. It is in this endless giving that the true beauty of the river is revealed. And perhaps it is this spirit of generosity that we must learn to emulate, giving without expectation, caring without condition, understanding that the earth, like the river, will always offer its blessings to those who honor it. The respect for rivers is not just an ancient tradition, it is a timeless truth, one that is just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. In this fast-paced world, it is easy to forget the importance of these sacred bodies of water. But if we can pause, even for a moment, to reflect on the role the river plays in sustaining life, perhaps we can find the will to protect it. For the river is not just a part of the land, it is a part of us. When we care for the river, we are caring for the earth, for ourselves, and for all the generations yet to come. The river, like the spirit of life itself, asks for nothing more than respect. And when we give it, we are giving the earth, and our own hearts, the gift of healing. It was in the early days of British colonial rule when the quiet flow of the Ganges began to feel the weight of foreign hands. The river, once revered as a goddess, an ancient protector, started to be reduced to a mere commodity in the eyes of those who sought to control every aspect of India. The sacred river, which had been the lifeblood of millions for centuries, had to endure the harsh grip of colonization, and its sanctity, its soul, began to be tainted in ways that would echo through time. For the people who lived by her banks, the Ganges was more than just water. It was a divine presence, a mother who gave and took life in a delicate, eternal dance. But when the British arrived, the Ganges was seen differently. It was no longer a river that sustained a spiritual and cultural bond, it became an object to be harnessed, used, and, ultimately, exploited. The British engineers and colonial officials saw in the Ganges nothing more than a resource to be controlled for economic gain. Under colonial rule, the river became a site of disruption. The once flowing tributaries were dammed, diverted, and transformed. Where villagers once gathered in sacred reverence, they now faced a Ganges that was being manipulated, that was being tainted by the needs of foreign powers. The river was no longer just the sacred purifier, it was now the symbol of exploitation. And in this transformation, something was lost, something intangible but deeply felt. As the British imposed their rule, they built roads, railways, and industries along the riverbanks, disrupting the delicate balance that had existed for centuries. The river, once a living, breathing deity, was now viewed through the cold, calculating eyes of colonizers who saw it only as a means to an end. The sacredness of the Ganges was questioned, her waters no longer a mirror for the soul, but simply the lifeblood of an empire that cared little for the spiritual connection between the people and the land. The people, who had long relied on the Ganges for their rituals and livelihoods, now had to navigate the tension between their devotion and the encroaching changes. They witnessed the transformation of their mother, the river that had always been there for them, into something almost unrecognizable. Yet, despite the forces that sought to dilute her sacredness, the Ganges remained a constant, flowing with an ancient resilience that the colonial rulers could never fully comprehend. In their eyes, the river's significance was simply about geography and economics. In the eyes of the people, it was about everything, their very connection to the divine, to their ancestors, and to the earth. But the colonial agenda never paused long enough to understand this sacred bond. They imposed their ideas and their systems upon the river, and in doing so, they began to chip away at the sacred narrative that had been so carefully woven into the fabric of Indian life. In towns and villages, people continued to bathe in the Ganges, to worship her, to seek her blessings, even as the British Empire's machinery continued to alter the river's course. It was a silent rebellion, an unspoken act of defiance. Despite the colonial presence, the Ganges continued to be a symbol of hope, of divine intervention, and of the undying bond between humanity and the natural world. The water may have become polluted, the banks may have been desecrated, but the spirit of the river, the very essence that made her sacred, remained untouched. The sanctity of the Ganges was not solely about purity in a physical sense. It was about the connection it fostered between the people and the divine. It was about a trust, a belief that the river was a living force that held the power to forgive, to heal, and to restore balance. Colonization sought to destroy this connection, to redefine the river's purpose according to foreign rules. But, in the end, the Ganges endured. She became a symbol of resistance, not just for the people of India, but for all who sought a deeper meaning beyond the material world. The damage inflicted during the colonial era was not just about physical changes. It was about something far more profound, the erosion of the spiritual identity of a people. When the British transformed the river into a utilitarian tool, they attempted to strip it of its divinity. But they could not completely succeed. For in the hearts of the people, the Ganges remained pure. It was a quiet defiance, an unshakable belief that no matter what was done to her, she would always be sacred. As colonial rule waned and India began to reclaim her sovereignty, there was a renewed recognition of the Ganges' spiritual power. The Ganges had been through much, the weight of history, the burden of pollution, and the neglect of empire, but she was not broken. She was reborn, just as the people who depended on her were reborn. In the aftermath of colonial rule, there was a return to the river, to its sacredness, to the understanding that it was not just the physical world that mattered, but the spiritual world as well. The colonial encounter left an indelible mark on the Ganges. It was a time of loss, a time when the river's sanctity was questioned, when it was viewed not as a goddess, but as a resource to be exploited. Yet, despite the external changes, the spirit of the Ganges remained resilient, timeless, and unbroken. The river flowed on, carrying with it the memory of those who had revered her and those who had tried to tame her. And in her waters, the people of India found not only a river, but a symbol of resistance, of survival, and of an undying connection to the divine. Now, as we stand on the banks of the Ganges, we are reminded not just of her beauty or her strength, but of her enduring significance in the face of all that has come to challenge her. In her waters, we see a reflection of our own struggles, our own stories of loss and resilience, and we are reminded that no matter how hard the world may try to change us, we too, like the river, can endure. The Ganges remains, flowing eternally, just as the spirit of the people who have always revered her will continue to endure. The Ganga has always been more than just a river to the people of India. She is the lifeblood of a civilization that stretches back millennia, and during the turbulent years of India's struggle for independence, she became something far greater, a symbol of hope, resilience, and the undying spirit of the nation. As the mighty river carved her way through the land, so too did the dreams of a nation fighting to reclaim its freedom from foreign rule. In the shadow of colonial oppression, the Ganga flowed like a silent witness, a river of time, and a symbol of resistance. It is in the stillness of her waters, in the murmurs of her endless current, that the cries for freedom echoed. The Ganga became more than just a source of life. She became a rallying point, a unifying force for millions of Indians who saw in her the purity of their struggle, the clarity of their resolve. As they marched toward freedom, the river stood beside them, unwavering, as a reminder of everything that had been lost, and everything that was worth fighting for. During the nonviolent resistance led by Mahatma Gandhi, the Ganga served as a powerful symbol. Gandhi's Salt March, a pivotal moment in India's independence movement, was one of the many events where the river's significance was woven into the fabric of India's fight for freedom. The march itself, a call to defy the colonial salt laws, started in the land where the Ganga flowed, and as the people walked, their spirits were lifted by the thought of the river's strength. It was a strength they drew from, the belief that, like the Ganga, their movement too would be unstoppable. The river witnessed countless moments of defiance. Every stone along her banks and every ripple in her waters held the memory of the freedom struggle. As Gandhi and his followers gathered by her shores, praying and singing, they found in the Ganga a sense of divine support. For them, the river was not just a body of water, she was a living witness to their dreams, their hopes, and their demands for justice. Her purity reflected the purity of their cause, nonviolent, yet powerful beyond measure. In the heat of protests and the rage of revolutions, the Ganga remained calm, ever-flowing, ever-persistent. Through the darkest days of colonial oppression, when the British rulers attempted to stifle the dreams of a nation, the Ganga whispered to her people, endurance, patience, resistance. The river's continuous flow was a message in itself. No matter the forces that tried to disrupt her, she would keep moving forward, one drop at a time. In the hearts of Indians, this was a message of hope, a belief that their struggle, too, would flow to victory, just as the Ganga would continue her journey toward the sea. Yet even in the depths of despair, there are sparks of hope. Small-scale restoration projects show how simple changes can have a lasting impact. Communities come together to clean the ghats, to remove the pollutants from the river's waters, and to plant trees along its banks to combat erosion. These grassroots efforts, fueled by love and devotion for the river, demonstrate the power of collective action. Local heroes and environmental warriors are emerging, refusing to let the Ganges be lost forever to human carelessness. The government's efforts, too, though far from perfect, cannot be ignored. The Namami Gange project, launched with the goal of cleaning the Ganges, has brought with it new technologies, new systems for waste treatment, and an increased awareness of the river's importance. Yet even with the heavy machinery and technological advancements, the river's recovery is a slow process, and the path ahead is still uncertain. But there is a palpable determination in the air. It's the kind of determination that has always been tied to the Ganges, a force that refuses to be extinguished, no matter how powerful the storm. At the same time, there is a growing movement that recognizes the link between the Ganges and the people who rely on it. For too long, the focus has been solely on cleaning the river. Now, more and more, the conversation is shifting to the relationship between the river and its people. People who rely on the Ganges for their livelihoods, for their spiritual connection, for their sense of identity. These people are no longer passive recipients of the river's blessings, they are active participants in its preservation. The river and its people are no longer seen as two separate entities. They are intrinsically linked, and saving the Ganges means saving the people who rely on it. Educating communities about waste management, sustainable farming practices, and water conservation is at the heart of these efforts. The river's restoration is no longer just about cleaning the water, it's about building a future in which people and nature can thrive together. The Ganges is not just a river. It is a living, breathing entity, a reflection of life itself. Its challenges mirror our own struggles. It carries the burden of centuries of history, of devotion, of life and death. And yet, it has the power to heal, to restore, to renew. The journey to revive the river is not just about cleaning its waters. It's about healing the wounds we've inflicted upon the earth, about making amends for the mistakes of the past, and about honoring the sacred relationship that has always existed between the Ganges and the people of India. And even though the river's struggles seem endless, the spirit of the Ganges is undeterred. It continues to flow, a symbol of resilience, of hope, and of an unbreakable bond between the sacred and the mundane. People still gather at its banks to pray, to bathe, to find solace in its waters. The Ganges, despite everything, still holds the promise of renewal, of change, of a future where its beauty can once again be witnessed in its purest form. It is not too late to save the Ganges, not as a river, but as a symbol of the resilience of both nature and the human spirit. The sound of the Ganges ripples through the air, its waves brushing against the ghats with a timeless whisper that seems to carry echoes of centuries past. The river, though seemingly ageless, flows relentlessly, indifferent to the passing of time, unaffected by the rush of modernity that surrounds it. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the water, it feels as if the river itself is suspended in an eternal moment, untouched by the hands of time. Standing on the banks, one cannot help but be overwhelmed by the profound sense of continuity that the Ganges offers. It is as if the river is both ancient and fresh, both a memory and a promise. The water that touches the earth today is the same that flowed through the lands of India for millennia, carrying the hopes and prayers of countless generations. Every drop of water is a reminder of an eternal connection, a bond between the physical and the spiritual, between humanity and nature. The river's flow is not just the movement of water, it is the pulse of life itself. For those who sit quietly by the river, watching the water rush past, there is a deep sense of reverence in the air. The Ganges is not merely a river, it is a sacred entity, revered for its ability to cleanse, to purify, and to carry away the burdens of the soul. It is a spiritual force that transcends the limits of the physical world, offering solace and salvation to those who seek it. The river flows, not just through the lands of India, but through the hearts of its people, shaping their lives, their beliefs, and their futures. As the evening sky darkens, the air thickens with the fragrance of incense, and the soft hum of mantras rises from the ghats. The faithful gather to perform their evening rituals, offering flowers, lighting lamps, and immersing themselves in the sacred waters of the Ganges. Each act, each prayer, is a silent acknowledgement of the river's enduring power, of its ability to wash away the sins of the past and guide souls toward a brighter future. The Ganges is a river of hope, a reminder that no matter how lost we may feel, there is always a way back to the light. The flow of the Ganges is an eternal rhythm, one that is felt not only in the water but in the lives of those who depend on it. The river nourishes the land, sustains the people, and provides a sense of peace that cannot be found elsewhere. It is the lifeblood of India, its waters flowing through the hearts of every village, every town, and every city that lies along its banks. It is the river of life, and yet it is also the river of death. For in its waters, the living find renewal, and the dead find release. The Ganges holds the power to bridge the gap between life and death, offering solace to the grieving and peace to the departed. But it is not just the spiritual significance of the river that makes it so powerful. The Ganges is also a force of nature, a river that carves its way through the landscape with unrelenting determination. Its waters shape the land, creating fertile plains and nourishing crops that feed millions of people. The Ganges is both a giver and a taker. Its waters can nourish life, but they can also devastate in times of flood. Its eternal flow is a reminder that life, too, is a balance between creation and destruction, between birth and death, between light and darkness. As the seasons change, so too does the river. In the summer, it flows with gentle grace, its waters calm and soothing, reflecting the blue sky above. In the monsoon, it swells with power, its waters rising high, flooding the banks and spilling over into the land. Yet no matter what season it is, the river's flow is constant, its rhythm unbroken. It moves forward, never turning back, never pausing, never hesitating. The Ganges is a river that knows no end, no beginning, only an eternal flow that carries everything in its path. The river has witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of new generations, and the passing of old ones. It has seen the lives of kings and beggars alike, each leaving their mark on its waters. And yet, through it all, the Ganges has remained unchanged, its flow a constant presence in the ever-shifting world. It is a river that transcends time, a force of nature that reminds us of our place in the world. It teaches us that, no matter how fleeting our lives may be, we are all part of something greater, something eternal. For centuries, the Ganges has been a source of inspiration for poets, artists, and philosophers alike. It has been celebrated in songs and stories, painted in vibrant colors, and written about in the most profound of verses. Yet no matter how much is said about the river, it remains elusive, its true essence impossible to capture in words or images. The Ganges is a living mystery, a spiritual and physical entity that exists beyond our understanding, beyond our comprehension. As the night falls and the last rays of the sun fade from the sky, the Ganges continues to flow, its waters glistening under the light of the moon. The river is a timeless presence, a reminder that even in the face of all that changes, there is something eternal in the world. The Ganges is not just a river, it is the embodiment of life itself, an unbroken cycle of birth, death, and renewal that continues to flow with the rhythms of the universe. In the quiet moments, when the world falls away and all that remains is the sound of the river's flow, there is a sense of peace that washes over you. The Ganges has seen it all, the pain, the joy, the triumphs, and the defeats, and yet it continues to flow, undisturbed, unbroken, eternal. It is a river that will never cease, that will never stop, that will always carry us forward, just as it has carried the souls of countless generations before us. The Ganges is more than just a river, it is a testament to the resilience of life, to the power of spirit, and to the eternal flow of existence. In the stillness of the early morning, when the first rays of light break over the horizon, there's a quiet power that stirs within the heart. The world seems to pause, as if holding its breath, and in those sacred moments, we feel the presence of something greater. It is as though the very air carries the weight of a lesson, an ancient wisdom that has been passed down for generations, a wisdom that transcends time and touches the soul. In the stories of Shiva and Bhagiratha, we find these lessons that speak not only to those of ancient times, but to each of us, here and now. Shiva, the mighty god of destruction, stands as a symbol of the raw, unyielding power of change. His very presence is a reminder that nothing in life remains the same. We often resist change, clinging to the comfort of what is familiar, afraid of what lies beyond. But Shiva teaches us that destruction is not an end. It is a necessary force, a clearing away of the old to make way for the new. It is in this act of destruction that creation finds its beginning. Just as a forest must burn to make space for new life, our own lives sometimes require a breaking down of old patterns, old beliefs, and old wounds before we can rise anew. Shiva's dance of destruction is not one of chaos, it is a dance of renewal, a reminder that change, though painful, is often the key to growth. The image of Shiva sitting in deep meditation, amidst the wild energy of the universe, offers another profound lesson. In his stillness, there is an invitation to seek balance. In a world that constantly demands more from us, that constantly pulls us in every direction, Shiva's quiet presence calls us to pause, to breathe, and to reconnect with our inner self. He teaches us that true strength does not always come from action, but from stillness, from the ability to listen to the whispers of our soul. In the chaos of life, it is easy to forget who we are, to lose sight of our true purpose. Shiva reminds us to center ourselves, to find peace within, and from that place of stillness, to move forward with clarity and purpose. And then there is Bhagiratha, the unwavering king who risked everything to bring the Ganges to the earth. His journey was not an easy one. It was a tale of perseverance, of relentless determination in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Bhagiratha did not give up, even when the task ahead of him seemed insurmountable. He is the embodiment of the power of persistence, the reminder that great things are not accomplished overnight. It is in the act of continuously moving forward, despite the obstacles, that we find our strength. Bhagiratha's story speaks to the quiet heroism that lives within each of us, the ability to keep going, even when the world seems to say no. His unwavering belief in the power of his vision, his willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good, is a lesson we all need in these times of uncertainty. What makes Bhagiratha's story even more profound is the recognition that he did not act alone. He called upon Shiva for help, understanding that even the strongest among us need support. This is perhaps one of the most vital lessons we can learn. We are not meant to do everything by ourselves. We are part of a greater whole, and sometimes, the strength to overcome comes not from our own power, but from the support and guidance of others. Bhagiratha's reliance on Shiva serves as a powerful reminder that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but a recognition of our shared humanity. The way Bhagiratha honored the Ganges when it arrived on earth, how he guided it carefully to the waiting lands, also speaks volumes about the power of patience and reverence. Too often, we rush through life, eager to reach the end without fully appreciating the journey. But Bhagiratha's careful guidance of the river teaches us that great things take time, that the process is just as important as the outcome. It's a lesson in mindfulness, in honoring each step along the way, and recognizing the sacredness of the moments that lead us to our destination. And perhaps, in today's world, the lessons of Shiva and Bhagiratha are more important than ever. In a time when many of us feel overwhelmed by the weight of the world's demands, their stories offer us a way to navigate the complexities of life. Shiva teaches us to embrace change, to find strength in stillness, and to honor the natural cycles of life. Bhagiratha shows us the power of persistence, the importance of vision, and the strength that comes from relying on the help of others. Both figures also call us to a deeper understanding of service. Bhagiratha didn't seek glory for himself. His mission was always for the benefit of others. Similarly, Shiva, though mighty and powerful, gives of himself without expectation of reward. Their lives are a testament to the idea that true greatness comes not from seeking personal gain, but from working toward the greater good, from being part of something larger than ourselves. In a world that often feels fractured, where division and competition run deep, these stories remind us of the importance of unity and collaboration. We do not have to face our struggles alone. We can draw strength from one another, just as Bhagiratha drew strength from Shiva, and just as Shiva's stillness reminds us that we carry the power of transformation within ourselves. In the midst of all this, the stories of Shiva and Bhagiratha encourage us to keep moving forward, to trust in the process, and to find the courage to make the impossible possible. When the world asks us to give up, to settle for less, they remind us that there is always a greater vision, always a way to keep going, even when the path ahead seems unclear. The lessons from these two figures are simple, yet profound. They remind us that, just as Shiva dances the dance of life and death, and Bhagiratha persistently walked through every challenge, we, too, are capable of transforming our lives. We have the power to endure, to seek help when needed, to find strength in stillness, and to move forward with unyielding faith in our purpose. These teachings, timeless as the river itself, are the gifts they offer us. And as we carry them forward into our lives, we become a part of that eternal flow, undaunted, unbroken, and full of possibility. The Ganges is not just a river, it's a living story, a powerful force that flows through the hearts of millions, both in India and around the world. It stretches its waters like an eternal thread, binding humanity together in an unspoken promise of hope, purity, and renewal. For centuries, people have sought her banks for solace, to wash away their sins, to breathe in the sacred air that rises from her flow. But what is it about this river that stirs something deep within us all, regardless of where we come from or what we believe? It's the same river, yet it touches the souls of countless people from every corner of the earth, transcending borders, cultures, and religions. It is the living embodiment of something greater, something universal. As the sun rises over the river, the light dances on the surface of the water, casting a golden glow that feels almost divine. For the people of India, the Ganges is a symbol of life itself. Her waters nourish the land, her presence purifies the soul, and her flow is a metaphor for the cycle of life and death. But the truth is, the Ganges doesn't belong to just one place or one people. She belongs to all of us. Across the world, people recognize her not only as a river but as a symbol of spirituality, of unity, and of the power of nature. She is sacred to those who have never even set foot in her waters, yet her pull is undeniable. The recognition of the Ganges as a sacred river is not confined to the boundaries of India. It has crossed oceans, traveled to lands far and wide, and found a place in the hearts of people everywhere. In the quiet moments of reflection, in the rush of the modern world, there's something about the Ganges that continues to resonate with those who seek meaning. Her presence is felt in places where she has never physically flowed, but her influence is as real as any river. It's the stories of people who have heard of her healing powers, of those who have prayed by her banks, who have experienced her magic from afar. It's the idea that, even though they may be oceans apart, they can still feel her divine pull. And it's not just the physical aspect of the river that has captivated the world, it's the timelessness of her spirit. The Ganges flows with the rhythm of the earth itself, steady and unyielding, yet full of mystery and grace. The idea that something so powerful and eternal can exist in a world that often feels fleeting and fragile is awe-inspiring. Her global appeal is rooted in her ability to remind us all of the sacredness of life. No matter where we are reminded that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. The Ganges calls us to reconnect with the sacred, to remember that the divine is in everything, even in the simplest acts, like taking a breath or dipping our toes into a river. There are stories of travelers who, having heard the whispers of the Ganges, make their way to India, seeking to experience her sacredness firsthand. They arrive at the Ghats, where the river's waters lap gently against the stone steps, and they are overcome by a sense of peace that defies explanation. For them, it's not just the physical beauty of the river that captures their hearts, it's the realization that this river, this place, holds something far beyond what the eye can see. It's an experience that cannot be put into words, but it lingers with them long after they've left, a memory that continues to inspire their lives in ways they could never have imagined. The Ganges' appeal also lies in her power to bring people together. As a spiritual river, she does not discriminate. She welcomes all who seek her, regardless of their background, their faith, or their past. In the West, her image is often associated with purity, with cleansing, with the idea of washing away sins and finding redemption. In the East, she is seen as the mother, the source of life, the protector of souls. But no matter where you come from, there's a shared understanding that she holds a sacred place in the heart of humanity. When people gather around her, whether it's for prayer, for ritual, or simply for a quiet moment of reflection, they are united by something greater than themselves. They are connected by the river, by the energy that flows from her, by the recognition that they are part of a larger cosmic dance that transcends all boundaries. The global recognition of the Ganges also serves as a reminder that the sacred is not confined to religious texts or rituals. It lives in the earth, in the rivers, in the mountains. It exists in the places that are often overlooked, the spaces where nature speaks most loudly. The Ganges is not just a river of India, she is a river for the world. Her message of connection, of renewal, of respect for the natural world is universal. In an age when nature is often treated as something to be used and discarded, the Ganges reminds us of the need to honor the earth. She calls us to return to a time when the divine was seen in the flowing waters, in the trees that shaded us, in the air we breathed. In her timeless flow, she shows us that true spirituality is not about distance, it's about being in harmony with the world around us. As her waters flow toward the sea, she leaves a mark on every heart she touches. The Ganges is a symbol of what it means to be human, our struggles, our triumphs, our search for meaning. She speaks to the human condition in ways that words cannot capture. She is both personal and universal, both earthly and divine. The global recognition of the Ganges is not just a recognition of a river, it is a recognition of the need for a deeper connection to the sacred, to the earth, and to one another. It is a reminder that we are all part of this great cosmic flow, and that in every ripple of the water, and every drop that falls from the sky, there is something greater at work. There is something profoundly moving about the union of Shiva and Ganga, an intertwined story that has echoed through the ages, leaving behind a trail of myths, memories, and moments of reflection. As Shiva sits in eternal meditation, his locks cascading in wild waves, there is the sense that he holds not just the power of destruction, but the balance of creation and renewal. And from his very brow, the mighty Ganga flows, a river born of the heavens, cascading with divine grace and ferocity. She is his gift, his burden, and his beloved companion. Together, they embody the eternal dance of opposites, creation and destruction, life and death, love and sacrifice. In the stillness of a moment, the image of Shiva's serene face and the mighty Ganga flowing from his hair feels like an eternal promise. It is as if, in that sacred space between earth and sky, the river is both a giver and a taker, a force of purity and a reminder of the fragility of life. Their union, so vivid in the mythologies of old, is not just the story of a god and a river, it is the story of the cosmos itself. It is the quiet moments of reflection on the banks of the river, where the world feels suspended and the heart feels at one with the divine. It is the roar of the river's waves, where Shiva's power is unleashed, and all that stands before him is humbled. Shiva and Ganga's story is one that echoes through the centuries, their entwined fates forever altering the course of both myth and reality. To witness the flow of the Ganga is to see the reflection of Shiva's eternal power, a power that does not need to be grasped, but simply flows. The river's waters are not merely water, they carry the weight of generations of devotion, sacrifice, and transformation. They carry the prayers of those who come seeking peace, who come hoping that their troubles will dissolve into the sacred waters, never to return. In every drop of the river, there is something of Shiva, something of that deep, quiet power that does not shout but instead exists in the spaces between breaths. To understand the relationship between Shiva and Ganga is to understand the nature of life itself. In the myth, Shiva catches the river in his locks, holding it gently yet with strength, ensuring that it does not destroy the world below with its tremendous force. It's a beautiful paradox, Shiva, the god of destruction, controlling the destructive force of the river, yet allowing it to flow in harmony with the earth. In this simple act, there is a profound understanding of balance. The world cannot thrive without both creation and destruction. The river cannot flow without both life-giving purity and the potential to overwhelm. It is a reminder that life, in all its beauty and complexity, is constantly in motion, never still, but always flowing, always evolving. Shiva's love for Ganga is not just a story of a god's affection for a river, it is a reflection of the deeper currents of life. It is about letting go, surrendering to the flow, and allowing yourself to be transformed by something greater than yourself. The river, in its endless journey, does not seek anything for itself. It is constantly giving, constantly flowing, and in that, it reflects the nature of the divine. Ganga does not stop to rest, to gather riches, to claim anything for herself. She moves forward, pulling everything along with her, cleansing, purifying, and renewing. And Shiva, in his wisdom, understands that to allow the river to flow freely is to allow the forces of life to play out in their natural state. It is to embrace the truth that nothing is ever truly still, everything is in motion, everything is part of something much larger than ourselves. As the Ganga flows, so too does Shiva's influence spread across the land. The river is both a physical and spiritual force, a symbol of life itself. To stand on her banks is to feel the pulse of the earth beneath your feet, to be reminded that the river is a living being, a presence that has shaped the world for millennia. And in her flowing waters, there is the presence of Shiva, a presence that goes beyond the physical world, a presence that touches the very core of who we are. Their union is not just a myth or a story, it is a living, breathing reality. In the sacred waters of the Ganga, there is a connection that transcends time and space. It is the connection between earth and heaven, between the material and the divine. It is the connection between the human soul and the infinite. And as the river flows toward the sea, it carries with it the energy of the cosmos, the energy of Shiva, and the love that exists between them. Every bend of the river is a moment of divine revelation. Every drop of water carries the essence of something ancient and eternal. Shiva and Ganga are not just gods and rivers, they are symbols of the deeper truths of existence. They are reminders that life is a cycle, a flow that is always in motion. They are reminders that destruction and creation are part of the same process, that death and life are not opposites but companions in the eternal dance of the universe. They are reminders that the sacred is not separate from us, it is in everything around us, in the flow of the river, in the stillness of meditation, in the heart that beats in rhythm with the pulse of the earth. Their intertwined stories are timeless because they speak to something universal within all of us. They speak to the deep longing for connection, for purity, for understanding. They speak to the human desire to find meaning in the chaos of life, to understand the forces that shape our existence. And in the union of Shiva and Ganga, we see that it is not in resisting the flow of life, but in surrendering to it that we find peace. It is not in trying to control the forces of nature, but in working with them that we discover our true power. Their story, like the river itself, is a reminder that everything is connected, everything flows together, and everything is part of the divine dance of life. The world is ever shifting, like the flow of a river, and so is the human heart, always searching, always longing for something greater. It is in this search that the story of Shiva and Ganga comes alive. Not just as a tale of gods and rivers, but as a reflection of our own lives. The myth of Shiva and Ganga isn't just confined to ancient texts, it pulses through the veins of every person who seeks meaning in the world, who tries to understand the impossible balance of creation and destruction. The river, ever present, flowing with strength and serenity, mirrors the human condition, a life shaped by forces beyond our control, yet filled with the potential for transformation. When you stand at the banks of the Ganga, you can't help but feel it. The weight of something ancient, something so profoundly tied to the cosmos that it almost overwhelms you. It's as if the river herself speaks, not with words, but with the flow of her waters, each current a whispered secret from the past, each ripple a reminder of the eternal dance of life. And at that moment, standing there, you realize that Shiva, who holds the universe in his meditative embrace, is not separate from you. The Ganga, flowing from his brow, is not just a river. It is a reflection of everything, the sacred, the ordinary, the timeless. It is the most humbling thought. That we, in our struggles and triumphs, are connected to the divine rhythm of the cosmos. Shiva's stillness, Ganga's flow, they are not distant forces. They are the essence of our lives. The destruction and creation they embody are forces we see every day, and the ebb and flow of our own emotions, the ups and downs of our journeys. Like Shiva's meditation, we too seek balance. Like the Ganga, we too flow through moments of peace and turbulence, always moving forward, always seeking, always evolving. There's something profoundly comforting about knowing that our lives are not isolated. That we are part of a much larger narrative, one that has spanned millennia. The myth of Shiva and Ganga is not a relic of the past, it is a living, breathing story. A story that speaks to us now, in our times, in the quiet moments and the loud ones. The same forces that shape the universe continue to shape our lives, guiding us with a cosmic hand. We may not see Shiva, but we feel his presence in the stillness of our souls. We may not stand beside the Ganga, but we know her flow in the rhythms of our own hearts. As we face the challenges of our time, of uncertainty, of loss, of hope, it is the timeless nature of this myth that resonates. The Ganga, sacred and pure, has seen empires rise and fall. She has witnessed the pain and joy of countless generations, and yet, she flows without pause. Shiva, the god who embodies the destruction of all things, holds the universe in balance, teaching us that creation and destruction are not enemies, but partners in the cosmic dance. In their union, there is an understanding that nothing is permanent, yet everything is part of something greater. Our lives, with all their trials and triumphs, are part of this eternal flow. Even now, when we face the most pressing of global challenges, there's a deep call to reflect. The environment, the sacred rivers, the balance between nature and humanity, these struggles echo the ancient stories. Shiva and Ganga's story is not just about divinity, it is about the eternal truth that all life is interconnected. The river is not merely a physical body of water. It is the embodiment of all life, all creation, flowing with purpose and meaning. Shiva's meditation teaches us that even in stillness, there is purpose. Even in destruction, there is creation. And even in the darkest moments, there is light. We see ourselves in these timeless narratives. The river is not just a symbol, it is our lives. The destruction and creation they represent are not abstract concepts. They are realities we experience every day. Like Shiva, we may find ourselves in moments of stillness, wrestling with the forces within and around us. Like the Ganga, we may feel pulled by currents beyond our control, yet still, we move forward. We are all part of the eternal flow. And it is in this realization that we find the courage to face whatever comes our way. Shiva and Ganga's story speaks to the human soul, to the deepest parts of our hearts that long for meaning, for understanding, for peace. In their eternal union, we see the truth that no force is too great to overcome. Even the most turbulent waters can be calmed by the touch of the divine. Even the most destructive forces can bring about new beginnings. The balance between life and death, creation and destruction, is not something to fear, but something to embrace. For it is through that balance that we find the space to grow, to heal, to transform. In the end, the story of Shiva and Ganga is not one that can be confined to a distant past. It is not a story meant to be left behind in old texts, gathering dust. It is a story that lives in each of us, in our struggles, our joys, our reflections, and our actions. The river flows as it always has, and with it flows the divine rhythm of the universe. Shiva meditates as he always has, teaching us the power of stillness and surrender. And we, in our fleeting lives, continue to be part of the eternal flow. A flow that carries us toward greater understanding, greater love, and greater peace. As we stand at the banks of the Ganga, we are reminded that we are not alone. That the universe, in all its mystery and wonder, has always been with us, guiding us through the storm, comforting us in our pain, and offering us the wisdom to see that everything is part of the same divine dance. The story of Shiva and Ganga is the story of life itself. The dance of creation, destruction, and rebirth. And in that dance, we find our place. We find our purpose. And in the quiet flow of the river, we find the peace we have always sought.